Rebirth of a Nation's Darling. Si Huang was startled awake. Her fingers were white from clutching the bedsheet, and the veins on her forehead were faintly discernible. The hazy sliver of light peeking out through the curtains told Si Huang that it was early morning. Her black pupils were obstructed by her dark, sweaty locks. A deep, coarse wheeze emanated from her throat like a struggling, cornered beast sound. Ha ha, he 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 he. Suddenly, her rough gasps turned into laughter. This laughter could have sounded joyful, but combined with Si Huang's current state, her covered eyes and her tilted head that was facing the ceiling, the sight of her was altogether extremely weird. Finally, she laughed until her throat was sore. Her laughter resembled sobs, desperate, maddened sobs. Then, she couldn't laugh anymore. All that was left was the sound of shallow breathing. Her hands, still covering her eyes, wiped the sweat away from her dark hair, revealing a smooth and full forehead and her previously concealed eyes. If anyone else were there, they would have been surprised. Not only were her eyes devoid of tears, but they were terrifyingly calm. Her overly placid dark eyes flashed with a devilish glint. "How much longer do you plan on running away?" A voice suddenly echoed in her mind, but Si Huang did not flinch. The corners of her lips curved up in a quiet, subtle manner, as she pulled the covers away and got out of bed. There was a full-length mirror in the bathroom. Si Huang stood before it and stared at the figure in its reflection. She saw a young man around 16 to 17 years old. He had long, slender limbs carved with smooth, sleek, beautiful lines. His fair skin gleamed brightly like white porcelain jade against the bathroom lights and ceramic tiles. The highlight, his face. He had long eyebrows that were located below his full forehead and arched toward his temples. His brows were naturally shaped to perfection and didn't need any trimming or tweezing. His eyes were half squinted, and the upturned tips of his eyes matched flawlessly his long, thick lashes. His dull yet intense pupils stared right back at her. His listless expression made his tender face seem grim yet dazzling at the same time. This was a face kissed by the gods, so beautiful that it rendered the dynamics of his gender unimportant, blurring the lines of his sexual identity. However, one would naturally identify her as a boy if they saw her short, messy hair and did not notice her body. In reality, her current status, including the sex on her identification card, was male. Si Huang stared enigmatically at her reflection in the mirror for a very long time. Suddenly, she closed her eyes. Then, when she opened them again 2 seconds later, the darkness in her eyes seemed to lift, as though her gaze was a clear blue sky after a storm. Her face lit up and bloomed into an almost, but not quite, bright smile. Pure and innocent as an angel, however, this angel could manifest and disappear in the blink of an eye. With a slight curve of his lips, the angel within the mirror had turned into one that was filled with disdain and scorn. Si Huang turned around and looked at her back in the mirror, which was riddled with lash marks. She had been cooped up in her room for the past 3 days. Her main activities had been eating, lying on the bed to allow someone to tend to her wounds, and reminiscing about every moment of her past life. To sum it up, she had spent 28 years of her past life living for others. Once her usefulness had run short, she'd ended up without a grave even after her death. Her body had been cast aside, defiled by humans, eaten by wild animals, infested by bugs, and turned into environmental nourishment. She had been having the same dream for 3 nights. In the dream, she endured the lengthy despair and agony of her death over and over again. "You have 10 days left to live," the voice echoed resentfully in her mind once again. This time, Si Huang replied, "I know." She turned around and turned on the shower, allowing the splashing sound of the water to blur out her voice. "This time, I will treasure life more than anyone else." Si Huang was only 16 years old the year when she was reborn, but she was 1.72 meters tall, which was considerably taller than boys of her age. She opened her closet and chose a gray-blue t-shirt out of a pile of dark-colored clothes. Then, she pulled on a black knitted sweater and a pair of casual black jeans. She looked at her reflection in the mirror again. Her longish black hair covered half her face, giving her a rather depressing air. Si Huang sorted through her memories. She had been just as introverted and gloomy as this before the age of 18. She had been Si Hua's shadow, simply to act as a foil to Si Hua's brilliance, as God forbid that she should ever steal his thunder. Her value had been finally unearthed after she had turned 18 years old. Only then had she been allowed to show her face in front of people. Unfortunately, she had then been turned into an even more tragic marionette. Si Huang curled her bright red lips. She reached up, teased the black hair on her forehead upward, and revealed her perfect face. She eyed her reflection in the mirror critically and subtly raised her eyebrows. That depressing youth was gone at that very moment. In his place stood a dazzling supermodel. Knock, knock. After knocking twice on the bedroom door, a stony-faced woman walked in with breakfast. Her initial plan had been to give her greetings, serve breakfast, and then leave as usual. However, she suddenly heard the loud whoosh of the curtain being pulled open. She instinctively lifted her head to look and saw the lanky youth's hand leaving the curtain right after pulling it open. It seemed like he took a deep breath before he turned around to look at her. His figure was bathed in morning light. "Good morning," he said in a mellow voice with a graceful smile. Crash. Si Huang stared calmly at the serving plates on the floor. Her leisurely footsteps gave off an indescribable elegance and grace. She stopped next to the stupefied maid Zhang, lowered her head, and whispered into her ear, "Did you have fun being serviced by your little lover?" Maid Zhang was stunned. She looked at Si Huang with her usual stiff expression but felt a hand pressing down on her head all of a sudden. Then, she was crushed against the ground by a powerful force, her face landing squarely on the broken pieces of the shattered serving plates. Arg, MMPH. She was pushed further down on the ground by an even greater force before she could formulate a scream. Her lips were warped out of shape by the sheer pressure of it all to boot. Shish, Si Huang bent down and soothed her in a soft voice. Be quiet. She released her grip and slowly wiped herself on maid Zhang's clothes. Don't worry, your lover isn't going to leave you because of your disfigured face. Besides, I have tons of money in my credit card. Maid Zhang, who had been about to fly into a rage, froze in place as she struggled to figure out if Si Huang had actually found out. What do you mean, young master? This is slander. I may be holding on to your credit card for safekeeping, but every single penny I've spent went to you, young master. Maid Zhang shut her mouth after retorting. The pain caused by the broken shards was too hard to bear. Then, upon receiving no response from Si Huang after a decent amount of time, Maid Zhang lifted her head and discovered that the former had walked out and was now a few meters away. His back was straight but not stiff, a stark contrast to the young master who always walked with his head lowered. For some reason, Maid Zhang shivered when she remembered Si Huang's gentle, mellow, and sublime voice. As she walked down the stairs, Si Huang lifted her gaze and looked at a woman and a young man that seemed to be close to her age and were eating a meal. Her mind began swirling with thoughts. She remembered receiving the lash marks on her back from Si Jian when she was 16 years old, simply because she had been hanging out in a nightclub. Most importantly, she had nearly caused Si Hua's death. Si Jian had been merciless when he'd hit her, probably because the possibility of beating her to death had never actually crossed his mind. He would then throw her into her room after the beating, leaving her to fend for herself and never bothering to check on her. In her past life, she had developed a high fever due to this severe punishment and had nearly lost her life. This time, it was likely that she had actually died and had been reborn in exchange. Si Huang chuckled silently. Bai Qinglin and Si Hua, who were having breakfast in the hall, had noticed her long ago and couldn't tear their eyes away. The boy, who stood on the precipice between youth and manhood, slowly made his way downstairs. His forelock was tousled back in a messy, indolent manner, probably set in place with hairspray. He wouldn't need to worry about his hair flopping down and obstructing his vision. His eyes were half squinted, and the corners of his lips were curved upward. He looked like someone who had just woken up from an indulgent and cozy snooze as he yawned leisurely. However, he did not seem crude. In fact, he looked naturally graceful, like a favored child of the gods bred by an old noble family. Si Hua instinctively tightened his fingers around his steel fork, causing friction against his porcelain plate and creating a sharp, screeching noise. The noise didn't just snap Bai Qinglin back to her senses. It drew Si Huang's attention too, and her pupils sparkled with a flicker of bright light, as if she had seen an object that brought her immense joy. Si Huang's footsteps progressed to a livelier pace. Her uplifted eyes and brows changed her countenance, making her a naive, beautiful youth arriving at the pair's dinner table and reaching out with his hand. Crash! The tablecloth was pulled off the table, causing the dishes on top of it to land squarely on both mother and son, who were utterly stupefied. Si Huang, what the hell is wrong with you? Bai Qinglin screamed in shock. Ha ha, Si Huang flashed a mischievous grin. She picked up a red wine bottle, which had landed on the ground, and smashed it against the still dumbfounded Si Hua's head. Arg! Bai Qinglin stared in shock at Si Huang, who was now holding a shattered wine bottle. You've lost it, you've completely lost your mind. What are you all standing around for? Get that lunatic, she immediately ordered her servants, who were still in shock when she came back to her senses. Si Huang poured the residual red liquid in the shattered wine bottle all over Si Hua's face. The sight of the twisted expression on his face and his agonized groans filled her with such joy that her eyes were now the shape of crescent moons. Don't come any closer, or I'll slit his throat. Si Huang's voice was just like her face, a melodious sound blessed by the gods, so luxurious that it could fill one with indulgence. If she spoke a little slower, it would be akin to a feather caressing one's heart, sending an itching need into their body, and rendering them limp and weak. Si Huang was well aware of this too, so she'd usually taken a great deal of care to speak in a simple and old-fashioned manner in her past life. She had done this to avoid having anyone think that she was trying to seduce them, which would cause unnecessary problems and further humiliation. However, she did not conceal it this time. Her tone was brisk and gentle. She looked at Si Hua as she spoke, stopping everyone around them in their tracks. After all, they could see that Si Huang was pointing the sharp edge of the glass at Si Hua's neck, and the glass had already pricked a small, bleeding hole into it. The hall was silent. Maid Zhang, who stood at the top of the stairs, was even more stunned. She had initially planned on ratting Si Huang out until she'd seen this. No one else could see the look on Si Huang's face, except Si Hua, who was lying on the ground. The smile on her face was filled with intense delight and spite. The light flickering in her eyes shone and darkened without warning, yet it held the incisiveness of a predator hunting and killing its prey. Si Hua let a hoarse noise out of his throat. This was his first time experiencing such raw, murderous rage. At this very moment, he knew better than anyone else that Si Huang truly wanted to kill him and had the guts to do it too. Oh my God, am I dreaming? I haven't seen Si Huang in 3 days. What has this shadow of mine turned into? Si Huang blinked. That tiny action made Si Hua's darkest fears disappear. She focused her beautiful eyes on Si Hua's expression at that very moment and smiled. Now, that's more like it. Weren't you accusing me of nearly causing your death? She stood up again and straightened out her hem, seemingly oblivious to everyone else around her. Then, she made her way outside with a smile on her face. The servants watched as she walked away, no one daring to stop her. You think you're so great, don't you, Si Huang? Well then, don't ever come back, Bai Qinglin screeched. One could hear a slight tremor in her tone if one listened closely enough. Si Huang nodded gently. Obviously, she knew that she would get another beating from Si Jian if she ever dared to come back. She'd probably end up crippled or dead. She gradually quickened her pace as she walked away. Bai Qinglin and the rest would soon recover from their shock and call for the bodyguards to restrain her. She would never be able to escape once that happened. Although she knew this, Si Huang's speed walk did not seem like an escape. She moved as briskly as a bird flying out of its cage or a beast finally free of its shackles. She might be beaten black and blue, but her sharp fangs never lost their luster as she rushed to freedom with more courage than ever before. Si Huang did not regret how reckless she had been moments ago, not even a little bit. She had turned a blind eye enough, pretended to be a fool enough times, and suffered more than enough in her previous life. This time, she was going to live for herself, take revenge, make her enemies pay, and do whatever she wanted. This was a decision that she had made long ago, ever since her return 3 days ago. Ha 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 ha. The smile on Si Huang's face grew wider the moment she stepped out of the metal gates of the Si family's courtyard. Finally, her smile turned into a huge, carefree grin. Are you done venting? This is just the beginning. You won't survive for 10 days if you keep this up. Don't worry, I've told you, I don't plan on dying. Then hurry up and gather faith, you lazy little, the calm voice exploded. Do you want to live? Yellow, rotten leaves covered her broken, naked body. Filthy insects crawled through the cracks from time to time. Disgusting maggots would drill holes into her rotting wounds with determination. Si Huang was numb from pain and was waiting for the final darkness of death, until that very voice suddenly echoed in her mind. What was the use of staying alive? she had never been allowed to even have her own name from the moment she'd been born. She was Si Jian's child too, yet she had been forced to live her life with the identity of a dead person, all for the sake of preserving Si Jian's reputation. She'd lived as a shadow of her younger half-brother until she'd turned 18. After the age of 18, she'd become a top movie star on the surface. Behind closed doors, she had been a tool for her family to win over support by passing her around various types of people. Finally, when her death had arrived, she hadn't even been given a grave. Her body had been so filthy that even she had been disgusted. Why would she want to live in this state? So, there may be some confusion over the uses of pronouns, he and she, in regards to Si Huang's gender. Without spoiling too much, let's just say that both he and she kind of applies to Si Huang, so you might see a mix of both. He is generally used when we are viewing Si Huang from an outsider's POV. She is usually used when we are viewing Si Huang from her POV, or people who know her true gender. Si Huang kept her eyes open as she stared at the fragments of light shining between the gaps of tree leaves and branches. Her throat quivered with great difficulty. Yes, nevertheless, this was her reply. It was an indistinct, husky croak. Once the word left her lips, 2 rows of muddy tears streamed down from Si Huang's eyes. It was true, her mind was naturally incapable of tricking her body. Despite her painful misfortune to be reduced to this tragic state, she still wanted to live. She wanted to live, she had to live no matter what. She wanted to personally send everyone who'd ever hurt her to hell and watch. She wanted them to suffer everything she'd suffered and more, much, much more. She wanted to live. Truly live. She wanted to do all the things that she had been frantically yearning to do yet was unable to. When the light in Si Huang's widened eyes turned to darkness, she woke up on the day that she had received a huge whipping, back when she was 16 years old and plagued with fever. Her fever finally went away after 3 days, and the wounds on her back felt slightly better. That voice remained her constant companion, urging her to gather faith as soon as possible. I only have enough power to preserve your life for 10 days. If you do not gather faith within 10 days, not only will you die, but I will cease to exist as well. The voice, who had introduced itself as Wu Bao, continued urging Si Huang as it echoed in her ears. If you hadn't happened to die on my body, soaking me with your blood. If it weren't for that, who knows how long it would have taken for you to find a suitable heir to merge with, Si Huang said, cutting it off. Do you have any idea how tricky faith is? You only have 10 days, 10 days? Wu Bao seemed to have lost hope, however, it was just as Si Huang had said. It had been waiting for ages, a few hundred years, a few thousand? Who knew? It wasn't easy for it to find someone who could merge with the 5th Absolute's inheritance. It was reluctant to give up, and it certainly didn't want to disappear. Your current situation is highly unfavorable. Anyone with a little bit of power could kill you. Don't you want more power? Once you've gathered faith, you'll gain more than just life preservation. You'll have much, much more than that. All you need to do is get faith. Peeved. Si Huang squinted her eyes gleefully. She wasn't irritated by Wu Bao's naive voice, which was yapping frustratingly away as if it was delivering an advertising spiel. In fact, she rather enjoyed it. This was how it felt to be a newborn. She was at an age when she still had plenty of time to change everything. She was pure, yes, very pure. Si Huang's eyes flashed with a glint of obsessive madness. The people along the bustling streets couldn't help turning their gazes toward the youth walking by leisurely. Some youngsters had even picked up their phones to sneakily take a picture while whispering and arguing over whether the former was a celebrity. Si Huang, who was now in the spotlight, wasn't unaware of the attention she had drawn. Not only did she feel completely at ease, but she simply curved the corners of her lips into an even more obvious smile, turned her gaze to the side, and looked at the 3 girls who had paused by the side of the road to take pictures of her. The 3 girls were stunned at the sight of the boy in their camera phone screen. The word, dazzling, wasn't enough to describe that perfect smile and those pleasant eyes with the dark pupils curved into a slight squint that seemed to hold a fresh spring of sunshine, focusing its gaze intently and gently on you. The arc of that smile held a tinge of careless loftiness. The boy was dressed in black and gray-blue autumn wear. The simple 3-piece outfit highlighted his physical proportions splendidly and made his already substantial height seem even higher than ever. The bustling street was in the background with its high-rise buildings, and people were craning their heads to get a good look at him. This was no random sneaky photograph. It could easily pass off as a picture of a supermodel on the street. The three girls were in a daze. They looked like students around the same age as Si Huang. By the time they regained their senses, put the phone away, and excitedly tried to see this Prince Charming in the flesh, they realized that he was long gone, drowned in the sea of people. Ah, is he a hot new model? Or is he a movie star? I've never seen him before. I've made a decision. He's my new Prince Charming. The female student who was holding the phone was disappointed at first. Then, she stared repeatedly at the picture on the phone, blushing with excitement. Quick, quick, send that picture to me. I want to post it on Weibo. Search, I've gotta hunt him down. There's gotta be someone who's heard of the debut of a person as gorgeous as this. I want the picture too. I'm going to use it as my wallpaper and lick the screen every day. He's so perfect, so perfect. Wu Bao screamed in Si Huang's mind as she walked further and further away. What did you just do? I can't believe that I missed out on something so important. Why did the faith value go up? It's so faint that it could disappear at any moment, but it went up. It FC King went up. Wu Bao felt as if the world had turned into a fantasy. It tried its best to recall every minute and every second of whatever Si Huang had done, but it couldn't find anything particularly outstanding. How many points was that? Si Huang asked calmly. 3, Wu Bao answered bluntly. Si Huang nodded. Why, tell me, tell me, Wu Bao demanded. You've mentioned that faith comes from the fanatic adoration and love I receive from humans, right? The more people sincerely desire my survival, the longer I will remain alive, correct? That's right, that's faith, the purest, most magical form of thought in the world. Then those 3 points of faith came from those 3 girls. What did you do to them, MMPH? Si Huang covered her lips and giggled. I smiled. That's it. Wu Bao collapsed. Back then, its master and creator, the fifth absolute, had been forced to undergo the most severe trials for the people. Sacrifice his arm for a life, risk his own life to save the world, and do many similarly heroic deeds to win a meager amount of faith. He had to carefully plan out his usage too. Before Wu Bao could continue its analysis, it was stunned by another wave of faith. WH, what have you done this time? Why has the faith value gone up again? 10 points, 11 points, 20 points. Si Huang paused thoughtfully and took a guess. There's this thing called the internet. Wu Bao was speechless. What the heck was this, internet, a terrifying divine weapon? Si Huang's destination was her current school, Star Youth Academy of Arts, the most famous school in H City. Si Hua was a student there too. However, Si Hua majored in visual and performing arts and management, while Si Huang majored in dance and calligraphy. Dance and calligraphy were actually good skills that would help a girl increase her value and desirable qualities, especially if the girl had been born into a wealthy family and didn't need to worry about her quality of life. Unfortunately, everyone seemed to have forgotten that Si Huang had been registered as male. According to her identification card, she was a boy in the eyes of the public. What use was dance and calligraphy to a boy's future? I believe this is a reference to the Buddhist parable, Giru Wei Ying, the story of the Buddha cutting his arm away to save a dove. Obviously, Bai Qinglin had not put her in that class out of the goodness of her heart. Si Jian, on the other hand, was clearly well aware of this and had not stopped her. That was probably when they had decided to turn Si Huang into a useful tool. Poor, miserable her. She had still been very young during that period of her past life and had continued to yearn for familial affection. Thus, she had tried her best to learn everything that her parents had arranged for her, hoping to earn Si Jian's attention and praise. She had been under the impression that Si Jian didn't love her because she wasn't remarkable enough. As for Si Hua's enrollment in this school, the Si family's main business was film and entertainment. The Si family owned Prime Entertainment, one of the current giants of the film industry. Although Si Huang had arrived at Star Youth Academy of Arts, none of her schoolmates could recognize her. Even those who walked past her couldn't help taking a closer look at her, secretly making a mental comparison and gasping in shock, jealousy, or admiration. Si Huang's beauty was in the top ranks, even at Star Youth Academy of Arts, where handsome boys and beautiful girls could be found around every corner. Is he a new transfer student? He can't be here to audition for Director Liu's film, right? I thought they'd already decided on that. Siwa from Class A was cast, right? That may be so, but the auditions aren't over yet and director Lu hasn't announced the cast. Therefore, the results haven't actually been confirmed. Si Huang overheard some of the chatter around her. Thanks to her blurry memories and asking for directions, she had finally found the classroom used for auditions. It might be the last audition day, but quite a lot of people were rushing to the classroom. Except for the people auditioning, everyone else was only allowed to sit quietly in the audience section and watch. They were not allowed to make any noise. Si Huang arrived at the classroom where the audition registration was taking place. At first, the staff member was surprised by her appearance and bearing. Then, he decidedly shook his head. Auditioning students need to take a number before registering for the audition. All the numbers have been taken today. Even if I let you in, they'd be done with the auditions before your turn came. Si Huang did not argue or beg the staff member when she heard this. Instead, she calmly turned around and walked toward the performance classroom. The male staff member watched her as she walked away. With those looks and that aura, he'll probably become popular, even if he can't act, he whispered, curving the corners of his lips. Some people were just that lucky. They were born with good looks and the ability to easily achieve things that others would never be able to achieve, even if they worked their entire lives for it. Unbeknownst to the envious male staff member, he would soon understand the true meaning of being blessed by the gods. This blessed child, dearly beloved by the gods, was destined to become a god in the hearts of the entire nation. Si Huang softened her footsteps as she walked into the performance classroom. Aside from the spotlight on the stage, everything else was very dark and dim. Si Huang's arrival did not draw any attention. Everyone's attention was fixed on the stage. The student who was done performing went backstage, leaving a lonely wooden wheelchair behind. Soon, the next boy walked on stage and sat in the wheelchair. This audition was for the role of the son of an aristocratic family who was crippled in both legs. Si Huang did not remember the script of this series. After all, it had been quite a while. However, she remembered missing out on the opportunity to audition for the series, as she had caught a high fever due to Si Jian's whipping. It turned out that the entire series was only 30 episodes, but despite the very few appearances of the character she had wanted to audition for throughout the entire 30 episodes, it was an important character in the series that stitched the entire show together. The full name of the character remained a mystery. However, the other characters in the series called him Mr. Qinji, while the female lead called him Chong. The person who had gotten the role in the end had been Si Hua. At the time, during a banquet to celebrate the huge success of this TV series, the Sovereign Journey director Lu had turned to the camera and said very frankly, Si Hua is an outstanding actor, but he is only an actor. His performance didn't quite capture my vision for Mr. Qinji. Perhaps I had unrealistically high standards. After all, he's a kid. He's not even 20 yet. He couldn't possibly fully understand Mr. Qinji, and he isn't Mr. Qinji either. Furthermore, director Lu had mentioned that no other character in the series was as charming and appealing as Mr. Qinji, including the male and female leads. That was a fact. Hence, even though Si Hua had failed to portray the best version of Mr. Qinji, as director Lu had claimed, due to the immense success of the character itself, Si Hua had still managed to take his first step into stardom. Si Huang bent down and whispered to a girl who was sitting next to her, "Excuse me." Despite being disturbed while watching the audition, Lu Ningning wasn't annoyed. Instead, that low voice made her drop all formalities. "What?" She turned around. Si Huang smiled sincerely. "May I have a look at the script in your hand?" The script was promptly placed in her hand as soon as she finished speaking. "Thank you," Si Huang said. Lu Ningning finally came back to her senses after a short pause. She surprised herself by staring in a daze at someone like that. She was really infatuated. Her cheeks flared. She waited a few seconds but did not hear any further movement. Thus, she gave in and secretly lifted her gaze to take a peek. The boy was completely focused on reading the script. He stood quietly in the dim room with one hand placed leisurely in the pocket of his jeans and the other holding the script. His long, slender, white fingers looked like the white keys of a piano. Lu Ningning already found the sight of him utterly beautiful, even from a stretched angle like this. Her gaze trailed upward from his fingers and compulsively landed on the boy's slightly curved lips. Unbeknownst to Lu Ningning, there was a quiver in her throat. She forced herself to tear her gaze away from his lips but indulgently met the depths of his lowered eyes. His eyes were filled with seriousness. His eyelids and lashes trembled along with every word and every line on the pages of the book. He was so absorbed that it was as if he was staring at his greatest love. Time passed slowly and silently. Si Huang finished reading through Mr. Chinji's parts and gave the script back to the cute girl next to her, who was still staring at her in a daze. "Thank you," she thanked her again. "No," gulp. "Problem, cough, cough, cough." Ahem. Lu Ningning ended up choking on her own saliva when she opened her mouth. Her dry cough drew irritable glares from the judges in front. Lu Ningning, who was now blushing, quickly covered her mouth. Her timely save had probably prevented them from being escorted out. Lu Ningning felt a hand patting her on the back and hurriedly lifted her head, only to see the boy smiling at her. His eyes were so expressive that it was as if they could speak, allowing her to truly feel his helpless sheepishness and comfort. Happiness had arrived too suddenly, causing Lu Ningning's cough to disappear before she knew it. Si Huang took her hand away in a gentlemanly manner. She had not forgotten that she identified as male. More importantly, she had noticed Director Lu's figure move slightly, which meant that he had already lost interest and the patience to continue watching the auditions. In reality, it was truly rare to see a famous director like him personally sit through the auditions until the very last day, especially since it had been internally agreed that Si Hua had already won the role. A student in a simple white ancient costume was currently sitting in the wheelchair on the stage, auditioning for the role. "How is the fate of the country any of my business? You've got the wrong guy. As you can see, I'm nothing but a cripple." The boy had delicate good looks and really gave off the vibe of a classically beautiful ancient man. He'd even made extra effort for the audition. He was not just wearing a simple costume. He'd also applied some light makeup. He sat in the wheelchair, half lowering his head, just like it said in the script, hiding the emotions on his face from the audience. However, his furrowed brow and pursed lips pretty much revealed his inner turmoil. The young man was a minor, so he was still very thin and frail, both look-wise and physique-wise. His self-deprecating tone and forbearing demeanor exuded a melancholic air that was altogether heartbreaking. That's right. How could anyone avoid feeling heartbroken? In the show, Mr. Chinji was the reclusive last descendant of the Chinji bloodline, as his relatives had been deceased since he was born, and he was crippled in both legs and deaf in both ears. No one noticed Director Lu furrowing his brows in the judge's seat under the dim light. He looked as if he could no longer endure the play before him. Finally, he rose to his feet and prepared to leave. His actions drew everyone's attention. However, a loud, impatient "ha" diverted their attention, including Director Lu's attention. "You talk too much. I told you to leave," a clear, bright voice echoed loudly after that impatient laugh. The source of its uplifted tone was yet to be seen. An imposing, proud image appeared in their minds. Tap, 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 the low, clicking sound of footsteps was heard from the corridor of the audience section. The room was silent. The boy, who was in the middle of his audition on stage, had turned toward the source of that voice long ago, from the moment it had rung out. The obscure figure drew closer and closer. At first, only his slender, long legs could be seen. Everyone felt a strange, indescribable feeling as they stayed in the light and watched that pair of legs walking toward them. Only the standing Director Lu's eyes lit up for a split second. Then, his expression became stern. The disciplined pace of these footsteps was reminiscent of the stride of an ancient sovereign. Only the members of the imperial family could walk like that. This was a culmination of teachings of imperial etiquette and the heavy embroidery on the imperial court attire. One had to walk in this very manner in order to appear graceful and effortless despite the restrictive nature of the robes. This kid, Director Lu stared at Si Huang, who was finally revealed in full view on the stage. Even he, who had a wide array of experiences, gasped at the sight of his beauty. Soon, he found his attention captured by his mannerisms and expressions. His eyes gradually widened, never once leaving Si Huang. Then, Si Huang gently waved her hand and glanced impatiently at the boy on the stage. She reached out with her hand, pushed down the air beneath her waist, then placed one leg on the steps that led to the stage. Everyone widened their eyes in shock. They actually understood that action. Si Huang was reaching out to lift up the hem of a non-existent ancient robe. "Why are you looking at me like that? Aren't you going to kneel before me?" Si Huang suddenly paused around 2 meters away from the boy as if she had seen some sort of unsightly look in the boy's eyes. She furrowed her brows severely and then laughed wickedly. Huh? I almost forgot that a cripple like you wouldn't be able to kneel even if he wanted to. Shish, shut up. The boy instinctively played along when he heard this. He had read the script countless times after all. That indignant tone fit his current portrayal very well. Si Huang suddenly went very red in the face, as if she had been hit. Her throat quivered, and she forcibly swallowed the blood that was threatening to spill out of her mouth. Her body swayed. Then, she lifted her head and stared at the boy with a deadpan expression on her face, her gaze darkening profoundly and murderous intent lingering in her eyes. She was the crown prince of the Feng dynasty. No matter how spoiled and willful the prince was, the proud, noble blood of the imperial family was flowing in his veins. Therefore, he refused to allow himself to spit out blood in front of this cripple, and he certainly wasn't going to let this cripple humiliate him. Now that he defended him, he deserved to die. The boy in the wheelchair was forced to stare into Si Huang's unpredictable eyes. His face went pale from fright. He should be grateful that he was in the wheelchair, or he would have gone limp and collapsed on the ground. That would only make things worse for him. The boy felt as if he was hallucinating as the scene described in the script was playing out before his very eyes. This young man was the crown prince of the Feng dynasty, Feng Kang, and he could have his head chopped off at any moment. He was wearing purple and black dragon robes, and there was a crest on top of his head. He exuded the elegance of a member of the imperial family, lofty and unyielding. Clap, clap, clap. Suddenly, the sound of claps interrupted their silence. The crowd finally awoke from its dreamlike state and looked at the crown prince of the Feng dynasty on the stage. Oh, that was inaccurate. This was a very young boy. Wow, he's so handsome, I didn't even notice his face. I thought that he was actually going to kill someone. Was it an illusion? I felt the same way. It was no wonder they felt as if they were in an illusion. When the sound of Director Lu's claps echoed in the hall, Si Huang's gaze relaxed. No one could have thought that this quiet youth and that overbearing man who practically reeked of murderous intent were one and the same. However, the fact that Si Huang was now standing in that spot confirmed that they were the same person. It was a good performance, but Director Lu eyed Si Huang as she stood underneath the spotlight. This kid had been born to be in the spotlight, to be the center of attention. But the role of Feng Kang belongs to an Yiyuan. Si Huang bowed before Director Lu, straightened up, and smiled. I know. Actually, I'm here for the role of Mr. Qinji. I didn't get the chance to audition, so I had to resort to this. I'm sorry for breaking the audition rules, but I really need this part and I'm sure that I can become this character. Not portray him, become him. Director Lu's gaze darkened. He looked at the sincere kid with a pure and passionate look in his eyes. He actually looked like a 16-year-old student now, filled with passion and innocence as he strived to achieve his dreams. Mr. Qinji isn't Feng Kang. Si Huang's face broke into a bright smile. Her intonation became higher because of her emotions. Yes, I know. You have 3 minutes. Director Lu sat down. Si Huang turned around. This stage belongs to me now, she told the boy, who was still occupying the wheelchair. Director Lu smiled quietly when he heard this. This kid sure is interesting. The boy was surprised. Then, he blushed. He shot Si Huang a resentful and unpleasant glare. There was also a hint of mockery in his eyes, as though he was hoping that he would humiliate himself. He got up from the wheelchair and deliberately tried to knock into Si Huang as he left. However, Si Huang was agile enough to avoid him. As a result, the boy tripped embarrassingly, eliciting a roar of laughter from everyone. Si Huang couldn't be bothered to help the boy up from the ground. He had brought this upon himself. Even though she wanted to gain the good reputation of a magnanimous person, was this really necessary? Si Huang's eyes flickered. She had no interest in touching someone who treated her with hostility simply for that small glimmer of profit. Once all unnecessary personnel had left the stage, Si Huang slowly sat in the exquisite wooden wheelchair. She adopted a very laid-back attitude and relaxed her entire body as she sat in the wheelchair. Everyone was waiting for her performance, but the protagonist had closed her eyes. The darkness that came when she closed her eyes was not enough to cover up the lights coming from above. Si Huang sighed internally. She was back on stage once again, the only place where she had been able to let loose and feel free in her past life. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds had passed. Slowly, the spectators began to whisper among themselves. Has he forgotten his lines? I think he's just being pretentious. Shut up, I'm definitely going to watch this show if he gets cast as Mr. Shinji. Ah, he's about to open his eyes. The students in the classroom collectively shut their mouths when they noticed some movement on Si Huang's end. However, Si Huang acted as if she had been woken up by their noise. She slowly opened her eyes but stopped indolently midway and didn't move at all. She looked askance at some corner and moved her lips. What's up with the racket? Gasp. That kind of voice was that? It was too provocative. This voice, although already naturally blessed, sounded nasal, as if he had just woken up from a nap. The sound of it was casually, gently circling their ears, numbing half of their bodies. Si Huang turned her head to the side, keeping her eyes on that empty space without an overly exaggerated expression on her face. One might even say that there was so much indifference on her face that there was no expression on it at all. However, the audience felt as if she really was looking at someone respectfully speaking to her while Si Huang listened quietly. 5 seconds later, Si Huang turned her gaze away, reached out with her hand, and gently flicked her legs as if a flower had fallen on her lap. That was right. The audience consisted of students who had read the script countless times. Si Huang's actions reminded them that this scene was taking place in Mr. Shinji's courtyard. He was having a nap under a Chinese snowball, so it made sense that a blossom would fall on his lap. Before the audience could gasp at Si Huang's control over the overall situation, they were all drawn to her next casual response. How is the fate of the country any of my business? You've got the wrong guy. As you can see, I'm nothing but a cripple. It was the same line in the script, but given Si Huang's devil-may-care tone, she might as well have been commenting on the weather. Mr. Shinji had been a cripple from a young age. How could he be so lackadaisical about it? Everyone thought that Si Huang had lost, but when they saw the expression on her face, they were left speechless from shock. The young man in the wheelchair had carelessly pointed out his deepest agony and flaw. His head was lowered, so no one could see his eyes. Only the corners of his lips were curved slightly upward. That was a smile. He was unconcerned about the fate of the nation and uninterested in the person who had arrived, yet he had his eyes half closed and was staring into a corner and smiling gently. Then, as if a butterfly was dancing in the air in search of floral nectar, his gaze moved ever so slightly and his attention and smile seemed to be directed to that tiny living thing. He'd only said those words to brush off the group who had come to seek his help, wasn't that right? Mr. Shinji never had any use for anyone's sympathy. He had never been ashamed of his handicap. His very presence has always been out of reach for countless others, only to be highly revered by them. He was independent, confident, dignified, proud of himself, and always striving for self-improvement. Why should anyone pity him? At that moment, the audience felt as if the young man was underneath a Chinese snowball, wearing long, wide-sleeved, snow-white robes with a plum blossom print. He hadn't come of age yet, so he hadn't tied up his hair. His soft, shiny, ink-black hair cascaded down his shoulders and back. He had an incomparably beautiful face and unparalleled skill when it came to mechanical invention. He was highly intelligent but was a lazy glutton too. Suddenly, the fingertips of his outstretched right arm shuddered as if they had been tugged by a thin thread. Ah, the audience once again came to a realization. Mr. Qianzi wasn't just crippled in both legs. He was deaf in both ears too. He observed his surroundings through an arc. By condensing his internal power into thin, micro threads spread around him and tying them to his fingers. Whenever someone was nearby and touched his arc, the threads would pull at his fingers as well. That way, he would sense their presence. He turned to the side and looked at the staircase on the stage. The look in his eyes made it seem as if someone really was approaching him. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince has arrived, someone in the audience announced excitedly. He startled a lot of people. Then, they understood. According to the script, shouldn't the Crown Prince of the Feng dynasty be arriving right now? Mr. Shinji, on stage, did not hear the announcement. He moved his gaze upward, settling on the face of the non-existent Crown Prince of the Feng dynasty. Based on the height of his wheelchair, it made sense that he would be looking up at a fully grown adult. Mr. Shinji was deaf. How was he supposed to hear anyone? He relied on sight and lip reading. Shut up. This tone was a stark contrast to the previous boy's enraged reaction. In fact, there wasn't even a single hint of anger, let alone rage, in his voice. It was more like an annoyance, as though this was a noisy little fly that could be easily swatted away. "Time's up." Director Liu spoke up right on time. The audience felt as if they had woken up from a dream. They had strange looks on their faces. Their thoughts lingered on the last scene of Si Huang's performance. According to the script, the crown prince of the Feng dynasty should have been slapped and be forcing himself to hold back the blood in his mouth. Si Huang, who was still on stage, was startled too, as if she was still in a dream. She closed and opened her eyes. The look in her eyes, which belonged to Mr. Qinji, disappeared without a trace in 2 seconds, and her eyes became the eyes of a careless youth of the modern age again. Director Liu watched the change in Si Huang's expression. His heart was racing so fast that his tanned face looked flushed. His voice was hoarse as he asked, "What is your name?" Si Huang. Si Huang stood up and faced Director Liu. She was not going to be Si Huang the puppet. In this lifetime, she wanted to take this name away and make sure that anyone who saw or heard it would think only of her. She wanted to bury the long-dead eldest son of the Si family so that no one would ever remember his existence again. She wasn't going to live for the sake of the name Si Huang. Instead, the name Si Huang would only exist because of her. Si Huang curved the corners of her lips. She was going to do more than take this name. She was going to slowly take back everything that belonged to her. "Great, you got the part, Si Huang." Director Liu could not conceal the excitement on his face once he smiled. "Hey, Director Liu, I thought we had decided on Si." The assistant director next to him got up anxiously. Director Liu shot him a glare. "I decide who will be cast as Mr. Qinji. This was agreed from the very beginning." His glare silenced the assistant director. Whoosh. The students in the audience exploded into a cacophony of discussion. Si Huang, Si Hua's fraternal twin brother, Si Huang? How is that possible? It's not possible, it's like a huge makeover. Amidst the chaos, Director Liu motioned his head toward Si Huang. "Come with me." In the lounge, Si Huang sat down on a single-seat sofa, facing Director Liu and a middle-aged lawyer. Director Liu initiated the conversation. "Call your manager and tell him to come over." Si Huang shook her head. She remained quiet for 2 seconds, as if she were formulating the words in her head. Then, she said, "Director Liu, I don't have a contract with Prime Entertainment." Director Liu was stunned. This was clearly the son of the owner of Prime Entertainment and he had a passion for acting. Why hadn't he signed a contract with his own company? Si Huang flashed a harmless, boyish smile. "I'm not going to keep this from you, Director Liu. I plan on starting my own company and signing a contract with my own company when the time comes." Director Liu remained calm. The middle-aged lawyer next to him, however, came alive. His face might as well have the words, "Are you kidding?" written on it in huge letters. So, Si Huang's expression looked even more sincere. "I'd like to sign an individual contract." Director Liu frowned. "What about your assistant, your makeup artist, your coordinator, and all the rest? What are you going to do about all that?" He was a smart man. A few words from Si Huang were enough for him to understand one thing. Si Huang had no intention of using resources from Prime Entertainment. Why? Director Liu wasn't curious enough to dive into someone else's personal affairs. "I can do it on my own," Si Huang replied. "You're not a star yet, so your guarantee isn't worth much." "I believe in you, Director Liu." Si Huang threw the ball back in Director Liu's court. Director Liu's face twitched. He stared at the smile on Si Huang's face bizarrely for a good few seconds. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, "I will dock your pay." "Thank you." Si Huang knew that she had won. She understood Liu Shu, also known as Director Liu. He was a passionate and dedicated film director. Although he was stubborn, he knew when to retreat. Besides, he had his own set of rules and limits. He was a perfectionist, but when perfection could not be realistically achieved, he would take a step back. The role of Mr. Qinji in her previous life in a different timeline was a good example. He simply hadn't been able to find the perfect actor for the role, so he had taken a step back and chosen Siwa. He wouldn't give up on the entire show simply because one of the cast members was not up to standard. However, once he achieved his envisioned perfection, he would come up with every means possible to solve any problem that came his way. He would daringly fight against anyone. Not only did Si Huang believe that she was Mr. Qinji personified, but she was 200% sure that she was far better than Si Hua or anyone else. In her past life, she had not only won the Movie King Award once, but she had been considered a natural drama king. Furthermore, she had 10 years worth of acting experience. Even current well-known megastars would not necessarily be a match for her, let alone the greenhorns at this school. Director Liu certainly wasn't going to give up on her so easily, as she was the most perfect version of Mr. Qinji. Si Huang personally led Director Liu from the elevator into the underground car park of Star Youth Academy of Arts and all the way to the door of his car. Director Liu had a smile on his face. He entered the car after Si Huang opened the door. "You're pretty respectful to your elders, kid." His smile froze in place a second later. "Why are you getting in?" Si Huang smiled shyly. "I'm hitching a ride. I forgot to bring cash when I left the house." Director Liu's eyelids twitched. In the end, he did not throw Si Huang out of the car. Although he had met countless handsome men and gorgeous women, this kid was so good-looking that he defied the laws of nature. Even though he was sure that the embarrassed look on his face was nothing but an act, no one could possibly bear to say no to him. Si Huang smiled at the driver in the front as she sat next to Director Liu and said, "To Fragrant View Societal Homes on Coral Street, please." The driver paused and waited for Director Liu to speak up. When he didn't, he drove toward the address provided by Si Huang. Fragrant View Societal Homes was an extremely expensive piece of land in H City. The greenery there was amazing, and the security measures were excellent. A lot of celebrities and plutocrats had property there. Si Huang was going there because she owned a small villa that she had inherited from her late biological mother, Li Lisi. Everyone in H City and the entire country knew the name Li Lisi. She had been a singer and a superstar 10 years ago, proficient in 5 different languages, and hailed as an exquisitely beautiful woman with fairy-like looks and an ethereal voice. If it hadn't been for her early death, there was no doubt that her stardom would have surpassed the land of Z country. The higher one's rise to stardom was, the more mythical one's achievements were. Even to this day, 10 years later, many people in Li Lisi's generation still regarded her as a goddess deep down. Furthermore, the famous songs that she had once sung were still raking in money for Prime Entertainment and were used for Prime Entertainment's shows. People said that Li Lisi had died from drug abuse, that she had surrendered to her vices. Si Huang used to believe this in her past life and had only discovered the truth much later. Her mother had indeed died from a drug overdose, but she had been force-fed drugs until they had killed her. She had died when she was 1 year old. It had happened simply because she had taken Si Huang to the master of the Si family at the time, requesting for Si Huang to be recognized, which she deserved. That silly woman had no idea that Si Jian had used her under the guise of love. He had been courting the eldest daughter of the Bai family on the side while they'd been setting up Prime Entertainment together. She had never thought that when she got pregnant and took a temporary sabbatical to rest in a mountain villa, Bai Qinglin would get pregnant too and would publicly announce her romantic relationship with Si Jian, rushing into a shotgun marriage with him. Li Lisi had only discovered this 3 months after giving birth to Si Huang. She'd only managed to find an opportunity to speak to Old Master Si when Si Huang was a year old after being stifled by Si Jian. She had asked Old Master Si to acknowledge Si Huang's identity. The elderly man had been very old but was particularly loving when it came to his grandchildren. Once he'd made sure that Li Lisi would never set foot in the Si family home again, he had promised to take care of Si Huang. However, Si Jian had refused to have a bastard at home. If the world were to ever find out that this was his B** starred with Li Lisi, it would damage his reputation. Thus, he had an idea. Si Huang would replace Si Hua's older twin brother, who was the same age but had died prematurely. She would live her life in public by using that identity. Half a month after Si Huang had entered the Si household, Li Lisi had died. Si Huang got out of the car, walked for 10 minutes, and arrived in front of a small villa. She moved her serene gaze around, kneeled, and began digging around a corner of the wall that she had been staring at. Soon, a small copper box came into view. Si Huang curved her lips and smiled. She wasn't sure if she was amused or worried that she had become delusional. Li Lisi had buried the door card and keys outside. Even though 10 years had passed, the contents of the box remained the same. Most homeowners at Fragrant View Societal Homes paid the full amount for the estate at once. Water and electricity would flow continuously for more than 10 years, even if no one lived in the house. As for the door access card and the keys, they would remain the same unless the homeowner requested a change of property. She entered the villa with the key card and keys that she had collected. Si Huang tore open all the wrappings around the furniture in the house, which had been placed there for dust-proofing purposes. Soon, the entire atmosphere was occupied by a thick layer of dust. Cough, cough. Si Huang chuckled helplessly and quickened her pace. 1 hour later, Si Huang plugged the USB cable that she had found into the wireless television. Then, she plonked herself lazily down on a chair, squinted, and stared at the woman who had appeared on the gigantic, high-definition screen. She was one of the most beautiful women ever. She had dark green eyes and black hair. Her facial features were more defined than those of people from the East, yet they were not too prominent. She probably had a mixed heritage. She was fiddling with the camera lens, causing the video to shake. Once the video came into focus, her face broke into a smile, as though she was a pure, noble princess. When she spoke, her voice was especially wonderful and crept into her ears through the high-quality audio equipment, instantly cleansing her soul. It was no wonder her voice had been hailed as the sound of a fairy's hymn. Si Huang quietly listened as the woman explained who she was and narrated her experiences. She wasn't as angry, sad, and at a loss as she had been during her past life. She was as calm as ever until the woman finished the video in a gentle, determined tone. "I'm so sorry, my little one. You won't be anyone if you stay with me. You're Si Jian's child, so you deserve to be somebody and you deserve your father's love. I can't be with you, as I'll only drag you down. However, I will be watching over you. I'll be watching you as you grow." The video then ended. Si Huang sat on the couch, staying very still. In her past life, when she had been sent to this villa and had found this video, she had been at a dead end, at the saddest point in her life. At the time, this video had been nothing more than an added scar to her already broken and bruised body. She'd even hated this woman. Why had she thrown her into this hellhole of a family all on her own and then left? She had thought as much until she'd experienced much, much more. Then, the warmth and purity in the eyes of the woman in the video had become one of the rare forms of consolation in her life. This woman had loved her deeply. However, her principles had probably been cultivated in a foreign country. There was no sign of hatred in her tone as she explained Si Jian's deception. Instead, she admitted to it with courage, fully capable of accepting the consequences of her own actions. She talked about status a few times, which meant that dignity was a very important part of her beliefs. Furthermore, she believed without a shadow of a doubt that she, Si Jian's flesh and blood, would certainly receive her father's love. After all, it was possible for a man to not love a woman, but he would definitely love his own child. Hence, Li Lisi had willingly taken herself out of the picture, not coveting or disturbing the Si family. What a fool! Si Huang shook her head, slowly opening her half-squinted eyes, which shone brighter and brighter, not with a dark black tone but with a dark green sheen. They were so dazzling that they could drive one out of their mind. Li Lisi and Si Jian had founded Prime Entertainment together. However, the truth of the matter was that Li Lisi had probably been the main driving force behind it all. When Prime Entertainment had reached its lowest point, Li Lisi had driven its reputation and achievements single-handedly. That wasn't all. Li Lisi had even invested all her money into Prime Entertainment. "Mother, you sent me back to the Si family so that I'd receive the status and everything else I deserved. I'm sure you believed that Prime Entertainment should belong to me too, didn't you? I don't like it, but it belongs to me. No one can ever stand in the way of what I want, even if it's destroyed." Si Huang, Si Huang, Si Huang, Si Huang. The voice in Si Huang's head woke her up not too long after she had fallen asleep. She flipped over. Crash, hiss, she had forgotten that she had fallen asleep on the couch. Si Huang, who was now sitting on the floor, rubbed her head irritably. "Wu Bao, shut up." Wu Bao was stunned by her dangerous, seething tone. Si Huang pulled out her phone to check the time. She really hadn't slept for too long, as it was only 1 p.m. "Wu Bao, do not peek into my thoughts without permission when I don't want you to," Si Huang calmly said while checking the date on her phone as she spoke to it. Si Huang remembered that the day of the audition had been clearly September 24th. "That's right, just like that, you've slept for an entire day. No wonder I'm so hungry. Si Huang rejoiced in her ability to sleep for an entire day. After all, she hadn't had a good night's sleep in the past 3 days, as she had been plagued by nightmares every night. She dialed a number on the phone. Once the call was connected, she said, "Hello, housekeeping? Please bring some dinner when you come over. The address is Villa number 21 in Fragrant View Society Homes. By the way, don't forget to bring a magnetic stripe reader when you come by." Si Huang, Wu Beo's soft voice resembled the voice of a resentful woman in a boudoir. Si Huang burst into laughter. "All right, what is it?" she said as she walked toward the bathroom. "The faith value, it's gone up again, it's gone up again, there's even shiny gold faith too. Is this the work of that divine weapon you call the internet? What is this internet? Tell me," Wu Bao chattered excitedly as she showered. "The faith value is divided into colors?" Si Huang asked. "Yes, look," Wu Bao replied complacently. A half-transparent object that looked like a crystal ball appeared before Si Huang's eyes. A large amount of small pink light spots floated inside it. A singular, shining gold light spot and more than 10 black light spots stood out among them. Si Huang fixed her gaze on it and noticed numbered labels underneath the crystal ball. Gold. 1 pink. 16,205 black. 13. How did you do this? Si Huang reached out with a finger and poked the crystal ball, going right through it. "That's the good thing about the faith value. Now that you're earning faith so easily, I don't have to be stingy with my abilities," Wu Bao replied. Si Huang turned off the shower, tossed her hair, and put on the bathrobe in the cupboard, which wasn't tied up. She walked outside as she tied the bathrobe. Gold represents stability, pink represents instability, and black implies that they want me dead. How did you know? Wu Bao went mad. Si Huang shook her head, refusing to give an explanation and tickling Wu Bao's endless curiosity. It was about to question her when Si Huang spoke again, pushing all of its questions away. "Come on, I'll introduce you to the divine weapon." The desktop was a model from more than 10 years ago. Although it looked a little old, there was no problem with the internet speed. Si Huang opened Baidu. Initially, she had thought that it would take around 1 day for her searches to pop up. However, when she typed the words, Si Huang, in the search bar, a series of relevant searches appeared below it. Her well-defined fingers leisurely tapped on the keypad. The light from the monitor shone against Si Huang's fair, still dripping wet face. She wanted to check out Star Youth Academy of Art's web forum. Her red lips curved upward when she saw the trending gossip topics all the way to the top, which had been highlighted by the administrators. The biggest surprise occurred at The Sovereign Journey, auditions. The most perfect Mr. Qinji in history appeared. Who would dare challenge him? Unexpected beauty appears in the schoolyard. Let me simp for you, Prince Charming, I want to have your babies. It's just like a fighting scene in a modern version of the Home Brothers drama series. Si Huang's had plastic surgery, he's shaming all men. Si Huang scrolled down and read every single topic with interest. She clicked on the first one. The only thing on the first page of the original poster was a row of an self-monologue. That was enough to describe the original poster's emotions and incoherence. It was also enough to tell her that the original post had been made by a girl. Below it was a video of Si Huang's audition for the role of Mr. Qinji the previous day. The camera was a little shaky, and perhaps the girl recording the video hadn't taken it from a good angle. Hence, the quality of the recording wasn't perfect. However, the camera pixelation was surprisingly high, providing a clear picture of the youth on stage. She had even managed to capture the tips of his fingers clearly. Si Huang then scrolled through the comments section. She realized that the comments had far exceeded 1,000. The first page actually included the following comments. First comment. Who would possibly have the guts to challenge him? Second comment. How could anyone possibly beat him? Third comment. You guys are nothing. Fifth comment. You should all jump off a cliff. 10th comment. You should take a good look in the mirror. Si Huang was speechless. After a silent pause, she thought of something and scrolled to the very bottom of the page before clicking on the last page of the discussion. Just as she had suspected, the reason behind this wave of discussion was that a few alternate accounts had criticized Si Huang's performance in the video, saying that he had only gotten the role because of his good looks and making other dismissive comments. Cute husky overlord. Scared emoji. Scared emoji. Girls are so scary. they lose their rationality and judgment once they see something pretty. Wiped sweat emoji. Soon, a new comment appeared in the discussion room. Si Huang raised her brow when she saw the ID. Her fingers nimbly signed into her own account in the forum. Then, she casually submitted a comment. Phoenix. I think girls are cute. Smiley face. A new comment appeared underneath her ID a second later. Caramel pudding. H. Heart. Thank you for the compliment, Your Highness. Kowtow gif. Si Huang curved her lips into a smile. Phoenix. Guards, take that yappy little husky away. Face with steam from nose emoji. This time, the new comments arrived faster than ever. The discussion seemed rather lively, at least, it did from Si Huang's point of view. Caramel pudding. Right away, Your Highness. Lovely cake. As you wish, Your Highness. Blueberry juice. Yes, Your Highness. Broken winged angel. Your Highness, we've kicked the dog out. Would you like it braised or steamed in clear soup? Caramel pudding. Misleading, angry emoji. Lovely cake. +1. Tender little cucumber. Have y'all noticed that His Highness has disappeared? The forum discussion descended into chaos. Si Huang, the mastermind behind the chaos, had already left her seat to open the door. A middle-aged woman who looked around 40 years old was standing at the door. She had a kind, comely face and was carrying a takeout box in her hand. Hello, I'm a housekeeper from Honest Housekeeping Incorporated. My name is Zhao Limei, she said awkwardly. Zhao Limei took one look at the young man at the doorway and couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes again. Instead, she fixed her eyes on his shoulder. Come on in. Si Huang stepped aside. Zhao Limei was taken aback by her soft, courteous tone. She was about to change into slippers before entering the house, until she realized that there were no slippers available. I just moved in. Just come in. Put the food on the table. I'll leave everything else to you. A mildly helpless voice brushed past her ears. Zhao Limei's heart was spinning in circles as she obediently followed Si Huang's instructions. At first glance, she was under the impression that this kid was a huge celebrity. According to her colleagues, rich celebrities were the most difficult to deal with because they had bad tempers. However, this kid was pretty well-mannered. He was very likable. Sir, after following Si Huang's instructions, Zhao Limei took out the credit card machine and the receipt for the dinner that she had bought. It's our company's policy to proceed with the payment first. Before she could finish her sentence, Si Huang had already placed her debit card in her hands. I know, this house is pretty big. You don't have to finish cleaning the whole house in one day. Just charge the total cost at once. No need to clean the master bedroom and study on the second floor. Don't go in those rooms either. The password for this card is 336,688. Once you've charged the required fees, use the rest for grocery shopping in the future. Si Huang was starving. She opened the takeout box as she spoke, then realized that Zhao Limei wasn't moving at all. She turned around, saw the torn look on the woman's face, and smiled. There isn't much money in there. You can go ahead and check the bank account later if you don't believe me. Therefore, it's fine if you hold on to it. Also, I'm quite familiar with Honest Housekeeping Incorporated. I'm hungry. You can get to work now. Zhao Limei did not hesitate anymore after hearing Si Huang's last sentence. Despite her hunger, Si Huang did not hurry through her meal. She drew up a money-making strategy as she ate. The card that she had given to Zhao Limei had been found in Li Lisi's room. As mentioned, Li Lisi had poured a large portion of her money into her investment in Prime Entertainment. However, she'd usually set aside a small amount for pocket money. Pocket money was really an appropriate way to describe it. The amount of money in that card was considered pathetic for someone with Li Lisi's status. It was likely that Si Jian had not plundered through Li Lisi's property after her death, as he was familiar with her ways. Si Huang had managed to find a grand total of 2 cards, both with the same password. She had given the first one to Zhao Limei and kept the second one in her pocket. She remembered that that card contained 6,000 yuan. She was going to have to rely on this residual cash to earn a living. Zhao Limei was still hard at work by the time Si Huang was finished with her meal. She gave her an internal nod of approval and then went back to the study. The forum discussion, which she had left open, had expanded by countless pages. She wasn't interested in reading every single comment, so she clicked on the second hottest discussion thread in the forum, which was more detailed than the first thread. The original poster had given a detailed account of how they had met Prince Charming in the schoolyard. Then, the poster had written a deeply affectionate confession in copious detail. Finally, they'd attached a picture of Si Huang that had been taken in secret. There was nothing interesting in this forum. The discussion thread was a mess too. After she closed the thread, Si Huang's eyes landed on the main topic of discussion in the forum. The title on the discussion thread was, "It's just like a fighting scene in a modern version of the Home Brothers drama series. Si Huang's had plastic surgery. He's shaming all men." It was explosive, and the account that had started this thread was Cute Husky Overlord, who referred to him or herself as Dog Master. School forums usually had a unique ID number. Everyone often knew who the owner of the discussion thread was, unless they were anonymous. For example, Si Huang had a rather pompous ID tag, Phoenix. Anyone could connect the dots and figure out that the account belonged to Si Huang. As for Cute Husky Overlord, who was anxious to see the world in chaos, Si Huang was quite certain that he was really one of Si Hua's best friends, Sun Er. He spent most of his free time in forums. His best skill was peppering the ingredients for topics of discussion. Based on Si Huang's later memories, she knew that Sun Er had signed a contract with Prime Entertainment long ago and had been working for Si Hua. As a highly revered individual in forums, he'd later become one of the people who'd controlled and toyed with Si Huang. His torture hadn't come in physical form. It had involved emotional attacks via controlling public opinion. He had also drummed up a series of gossip on Si Huang, which had been either exaggerated truths or fabricated lies, and he had done it with ease too. He had drawn the entire nation's attention, letting Si Huang rise and fall in the ocean of public opinion, like a solitary sailboat without an anchor that could be smashed to pieces by the crushing waves or be quickly repaired and made anew by a dedicated repairman. The Si family had not stopped Sun Er as long as he'd guaranteed that Si Huang's fame remained unchanged. Even though most people addressed him as Dog Master in the school forum, groups that disliked him usually called him Snitch Dog. Si Huang was not in either of these two categories. She had already determined Sun Er's fate from the moment the ID had appeared before her eyes. She clicked on Sun Er's thread with a "C'est la vie" attitude and read the detailed description in the thread, feeling very pleased. He'd dug out the incident when Si Huang had tricked Si Hua at the nightclub a few days ago. The details were described so vividly that one would feel as if the author had been on the scene himself. The funniest thing was that Sun Er had even included hers and Si Hua's thoughts to boot. Does he think he's a mind reader, or that he's writing a novel? She read through the contents of the thread rapidly and found a claim on Si Huang's suspected plastic surgery. Although the word "suspected" was being used, a detailed examination of the words used showed a definite tone and manner, and there was also an accompanying picture of Si Huang's previously gloomy and unremarkable looks, when his hair had been covering his face. This picture was placed next to the one taken in the classroom the previous day for the sake of comparison. There was also a conclusion using professional terminology that confirmed that Si Huang had, in fact, had plastic surgery. Finally, the poster ended the article with a devastating line, "He's not a man at all. He's brought shame upon all men." The discussion following the post had already grown into a huge ruckus. Some people were speculating, some were gloating, and a lot of women were standing up for Si Huang. The most persistent ID tags gave Si Huang a sense of familiarity and left her speechless. Caramel pudding. Hey, Snitch Dog. Drop the trash talk. Do you even understand plastic surgery? You're talking like a professional animal. Are you the one who's had plastic surgery? Oh my, and you still look like a shifty-eyed rat? It's no wonder you've turned into a psycho. Lovely cake. You go. Pudding, blueberry juice. Based on my expert eye as an art student, His Highness's holy face is a gift from God. Look at those smooth lines. How could they possibly have any trace of artificiality? Ha! If you could actually create such a gorgeous face with plastic surgery, I'd bow down and call you Your Highness. Caramel pudding. I believe in the prince, long live the prince. They didn't bring up the fight between the brothers, probably because they didn't know the truth behind the incident at the nightclub. Your Highness, Si Huang's faraway thoughts were cut off by Wu Bao's weird, ingratiating tone. She raised her brows and waited for Wu Bao to continue. Another gold sparkle has risen. What's the benefit of a gold sparkle? Si Huang asked. You have keen intelligence, Your Highness. You're interested in this again at last. The gold sparkle is. Speak English, Si Huang said. One gold sparkle can be exchanged for 10,000 little pink ones, but 10,000 little pink ones cannot be exchanged for a gold sparkle. Your main goal is to gain benefits and ensure your survival. For now, if you can gather 5 gold sparkles, you'll have the chance to power up your body once. 5. You only need 5. How could you possibly miss out on that? Don't you want the scars on your back to recover fully? Once you gain your first power-up, you'll have completely smooth, flawless, invisible scars. Furthermore, powering up your physique will improve your memory. Ooh. Si Huang moved her gaze across the small Wabao advertisement on the webpage on the computer screen and marveled at Wu Bao's proficiency in learning languages. I understand. She turned her gaze back to the 3 adorable ID tags. In a 3-bedroom commercial housing building with 1 living room situated in a residential area outside Star Youth Academy of Arts, 3 lively young girls were sitting on a couch in different positions, each with a laptop on her lap. Should we continue, Ningning? Zhou Xiaowen, who was wearing a cute pink hoodie with a pair of blue leggings, cocked her head sideways to the left. We'll defend the prince's name to death, Lu Ningning replied without lifting her head. We're in too deep, Lu Yan, the girl on the right with the long, straight black hair and a chilly expression on her face, said stoically. However, her fingers flew across the keyboard faster than the other 2 girls' fingers. Si Huang went downstairs to get a glass of water at 6 p.m. She noticed the now refreshingly clean hall at first glance, and her spirits lifted. Sir, it looked like Zhao Laimei had been waiting for quite a while. My name is Si Huang. If you have something on your mind, feel free to speak, Si Huang said as she poured water. Master Si, I have 2 kids at home, so I'll need to discuss my schedule with you, Zhao Laimei replied in a gentle voice. Si Huang smiled. I was just about to discuss this with you. You'll only need to make lunch and dinner, so come in by 12 p.m. and leave before 6 p.m. should any unique circumstances arise. I will send you a message. I haven't gotten around to making a spare key card, but I will be at home over the next few days, so the door will be open for you. She spoke in a leisurely tone. Her sublime voice was like silky red wine. She did not ask Zhao Laimei's opinion, but she did not seem like she was ordering her around either. Zhao Laimei instinctively followed her orders and showed no signs of objection. Si Huang finished her cup of water, poured another glass, and went upstairs. She was very satisfied with Zhao Laimei, who had cleaned the daily utensils first. Next, Si Huang was going to buy clothes and daily necessities online. She had only taken her identification card with her when she'd left the Si household. She had not wanted to take anything from the Si household at the time, and there was nothing worth taking anyway. Furthermore, her credit card, which was supposed to be her pocket money as the eldest master of the Si family, was controlled by maid Zhang. She would have had no way of taking it anyway. Your Highness, the faith value? Wu Bao's nagging voice echoed in her mind again. Si Huang closed her Wabao tab after making her purchase and went on the stock market. Then, she carefully browsed the page. Ever heard of the phrase, money makes the world go round? She could not possibly remember everything that had happened 10 years ago, but she had some blurry inkling. She just needed to slowly scroll down. 10 minutes later, Si Huang found a few stocks that could make a small profit. The explosively profitable stock incident was not going to happen this year. Si Huang wasn't disappointed. Those small stocks were enough for her to survive and complete many of the tasks on her to-do list. Si Huang stayed at home for 3 consecutive days, enjoying good food and sufficient rest. Her complexion looked rosier than a few days ago. The discussions about Si Huang on the forum of Star Youth Academy of Arts did not diminish over time. In fact, they gradually grew more rampant. As a result, the amount of small pink sparkles in Si Huang's faith orb continuously went up and down, even though she simply stayed at home doing nothing. This would be challenging for Wu Bao's cardiac function, if it had a heart at all. The best news for Wu Bao was that there were now 3 gold sparkles. It was like a little magpie, nagging in Si Huang's mind from time to time or exclaiming about how easy it was to earn faith in this century and saying that the future seemed bright. Si Huang did not burst its little bubble of simple naivety. Blind admiration from people in this century was indeed easily obtained, but people turned against others equally fast too. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The phone on the table was vibrating. Si Huang's eyes sank like pools of the abyss when she saw the caller's name. Si Huang? Wu Bao's cautious voice echoed in her mind, bringing Si Huang back to her senses. Her tense expression turned calm again, and her eyes flashed threateningly. The sparkle in her eyes did not stem from pure sunlight. Instead, her eyes flashed keenly like the eyes of a bloodthirsty predator hunting its prey, filled with such exhilaration that it breathed with low gasps through its nasal cavity. Si Huang's expression grew increasingly more rattled. Her half-squinted eyes were now tinted with an intense dark green shade, more enchanting than emerald, mysterious, and intriguing. Wu Bao went very quiet when it faced this side of Si Huang, whose calm exterior merely served as a facade for an undercurrent of madness. It was feeling a little scared. Who knew what kind of lunacy she was capable of in this state? The phone on the table vibrated a few more times and stopped. 2 seconds later, it began vibrating again. This time, Si Huang answered the call without hesitation and put it on speakerphone. Why did it take you so long to answer the phone? A stern question was the first thing that came from the receiver. Si Huang lifted her long right leg and crossed it over her left leg. I was pouring a glass of water, she lied calmly. You just can't stand leaving well enough alone for one day, can you? I've been too lenient on you over the past few days. That's why your memory's faulty, isn't it? How dare you make such a scene at home? Your mother told me that you broke a liquor bottle over Si Hua's head. Now, he's bedridden. What could I have possibly done in my past life to deserve an evil spawn like you? Are you listening to me? Si Huang curved the corners of her lips. Yes, I'm listening. What kind of tone is that? I'll be home soon, and if I don't see you. He didn't complete his threat, probably because he was completely confident that Si Huang wouldn't have the guts to stay away from home. The tips of Si Huang's fingers gently tapped against the handrail. She focused her gaze on a part of the room. Her tone was calm and leisurely, adding a subtle elegance to her voice. Before you teach me a lesson, you should ask Si Hua what he's done. I'll stay out of your way in the next few days. Go home? That's not my home. The words, go home, seem really strange and foreign. Si Huang hung up, not willing to think about Si Jian's reaction on the other end of the line. Wu Bao, here, that body power-up you mentioned, how far can it go? Wu Bao immediately understood why Si Huang had asked that question. Your physique has great flexibility and strength. The only thing you lack is power. Once you've had your first power-up, you'll have the power of a fully grown man. Your flexibility and strength will reach even greater depths. Then, your speed, jumping power, and acuity will receive a huge upgrade. Oh yes, that also includes your memory, 5 senses, and mental capacity. The exact scale of improvement will depend on your potential. I have no way of analyzing these hidden abilities. I want a power-up, Your Highness. You are required to have 5 gold sparkles for your first power-up, Wu Bao explained in a stern, provocative manner. That's not exactly true. Si Huang forced a smile. Her gaze remained unsettled. Her half-closed dark green eyes were even harder to read, as they were concealed by darkness. If anyone else had been there, they would have been bewildered by the dangerous and mysterious aura coming from Si Huang. She was very similar to a demon of the abyss from Wu Bao's point of view. Her cold, elegant, and handsome image was like the calm before the storm. It was too afraid to hold back, but it wasn't exactly forthright either. How did you know? The little pink sparkles can't possibly be completely useless, Si Huang chuckled. Wu Bao felt slightly melancholy. It was beginning to think that having an overly intelligent heir wasn't exactly good news. Disciplining her would be much more difficult. You're right. The 2 missing gold sparkles can be temporarily replaced with 20,000 little pink sparkles. That way, you can have your first power-up much earlier than expected. However, this comes with a terrible price. You must receive twice the amount, as in 4 gold sparkles, within 20 days, or you will die. Furthermore, you'll drag me down into the grave too. Si Huang was reminded of a sulky child when she heard its tone in the last part of its sentence. She sniggered. The danger in her eyes disappeared too. However, she was determined to power up. Once Si Huang made a decision, no one could stand in her way. Wu Bao was well aware of this. After a fruitless round of persuading, it gave up and went along with Si Huang's wishes. Before the power-up, Wu Bao reminded Si Huang, your first power-up sets up your foundation, Your Highness, so it's very important. You must hold on for as long as you can, even if it hurts. Wu Bao had no idea how painful it would be. It had never experienced it itself, so it had no way of understanding how painful it would get. Si Huang was amused by the way Wu Bao continuously called her, Your Highness, in its naive little voice. She did not discourage its thirst for knowledge either. Wu Bao kept imitating anything related to Si Huang online after being introduced to the wonders of the internet. Si Huang gave Zhao Lime a call, telling her not to come over tomorrow just to avoid any unwanted accidents. Si Huang was glad that she had taken precautions before the time came for her to endure the transformation, as it would be really agonizing. Initially, the warm sensation that entered her body felt like candy seducing her to approach it. Before she could taste it, she was overcome by a piercing agony that made her feel like her bones and flesh were rearranging themselves. This was probably the feeling of her bones suddenly growing, her blood and flesh flowing backward, and her blood vessels bursting and rebuilding themselves. This made Si Huang collapse on the ground and convulse. Soon, her back was drenched in sweat. However, Si Huang did not cry out. To her, mental torture was more unbearable than physical pain. It made her completely forget about opening her mouth to scream in pain. There was a growling wild beast hidden in the deepest recesses of her soul. Time passed slowly, and she lost track of it. Wu Bao's encouraging voice echoed in her mind, but it gradually blurred out as time passed. Finally, Si Huang actually smiled. This agony was terrifying. So terrifying that she felt masochistically carefree. She remembered the numb hopelessness that she had felt just before her death. It was as though a large, empty black hole had made everything in front of her burst along with her sensory organs and kept growing bigger and bigger. This agony soon turned into a sweet form of torture, giving Si Huang a clear sense of hope that stemmed from the very core of her being. Si Huang had no idea when she had passed out. By the time she woke up, it was night time of the very next day. The clothes on her back were crumpled, as if they had gone through the wringer, and they reeked of a strange stench of blood and sweat. Si Huang didn't need a mirror to know that she looked horrible right now. She shook her head and cut off Wu Bao's excited nagging, which had begun as soon as she'd woken up. Give my brain a break. Wu Bao shut up. Si Huang enjoyed a rare 20-minute aromatherapy bath. She felt more refreshed than ever before and felt a clear change in her body. Her eyes flashed with surprise. Then, she walked toward the floor-length mirror. Despite being used to seeing handsome men and gorgeous ladies, Si Huang couldn't help agreeing that the person in the mirror was indeed blessed. Her tall, lanky body was proportioned according to the golden ratio. Her skin was fairer than ever, yet it did not feel delicate. It was glowing with a smooth luster like white jade. The sight of it alone was enough to make one gasp, giving them the urge to touch her just to see if her skin really was as smooth as jade, yet it felt blasphemous to touch it so freely. Her features seemed unchanged yet slightly different. Si Huang squinted and finally figured out why. Her complexion had improved, allowing her already perfect features to glow with a healthy radiance. Her pupils and the whites of her eyes were even more defined than ever, as if they had been washed. If one inspected her carefully from extremely close proximity, they'd notice that the rims of her eyes looked like circular rings of pure, dark green. Even Si Huang, who had been born a woman, couldn't help admitting that she looked like an enchantress that could bring ruin upon the human race if she walked out looking like this. She looked like the type that did not emit a demonic aura to boot. You're amazing, Your Highness. You actually held on until the end. The effects are awesome. You've even received a special reward. Wu Bao took advantage of Si Huang's silence and jumped in again. Si Huang turned to the side. Her heart leapt at the sight of her now smooth back, which was devoid of any scars from the lashing she had previously received. A special reward? She asked. Your aesthetic value has increased too, Wu Bao announced with a classy tone. Si Huang chuckled upon hearing Wu Bao's newly learned modern slang. Is that all? She wrapped herself up in a bathrobe and walked out. What do you mean, is that all? The fifth absolute earned his name because his first absolute was his extraordinary good looks. This is very important. It'll be very useful to you when you begin training for the other absolute skills. It paused and lowered its voice. However, your aesthetic value is already off the charts, Your Highness, so the effects of the power-up don't look like much, hee hee. Si Huang only paid attention when Wu Bao mentioned that her looks would be related to training for other absolute skills. Her expression looked mildly strange, but she didn't rush into an interrogation. She was just putting on her pants when she suddenly paused midway. Wu Bao, have I grown taller? Yup. By 5 centimeters. Si Huang sighed. That explained the agonizing torture of distending pain in her bones and muscles yesterday. She took off her half-pulled-on pants, chose a longer pair of black casual pants, put on a long-sleeved t-shirt, and layered it with a black sweater with a stand-up collar. This was simple attire, yet Si Huang seemed to elevate the outfit into international luxury brand status like a supermodel. I have to shop for clothes again, and it's only been a few days. Si Huang gently shook her head, pulled out a black baseball cap, and walked out. She noticed a few missed call notifications on her phone from yesterday as she left the house. She raised her brow and ignored them all. She silenced her phone and put it on vibrate mode before stuffing it into her pants pocket. In order to explain the missed calls, one would have to turn the clock back to the previous day. Si Jian had a complicated look on his face after Si Huang hung up on him. He was more mystified than angry. This was the first time he'd ever heard Si Huang speak to him in this way. She'd even rebelled against him. Si Jian had never thought that Si Huang would have the courage to go against his orders and refuse to come home. In fact, when he arrived home and didn't see her, he was under the impression that Si Huang was on a long journey. Bai Qinglin immediately broke down into sobs, lamenting over Si Huang's crimes when she saw that Si Jian had arrived home. Si Hua only went downstairs when it was time for dinner. He looked frail and pitiful due to the pale look on his face and the bandage around his head. As a result, Si Jian, who had already grown irritable after hearing Bai Qinglin's excessive lamenting, naturally directed his rage at Si Huang, who still hadn't arrived home. By the time the family of 3 had finished dinner, Si Huang still hadn't gotten home. Of course, Bai Qinglin wouldn't miss out on this opportunity to badmouth her. The grim look on Si Jian's face was enough to convey how displeased he was with Si Huang. "Dad, look at this," Si Hua said, placing a tablet in front of Si Jian. The tablet showcased the 3 hottest discussion threads on the forum of Star Youth Academy of Arts, which had spread even wider after 3 days. Si Hua did not notice the slight change in Si Jian's eyes. "Director Liu was supposed to cast me in that role," he complained pitifully. "I don't know what Si Huang did to take that role from me. He's never studied acting. It would have been fine if he'd just showed up and simply read the script. How could he possibly have played the part well? Let's hope he doesn't end up humiliating Prime Entertainment." Slap. Si Hua was stunned when he was suddenly slapped across his face. Bai Qinglin screamed and rushed to check on Si Hua's condition. Si Jian rose to his feet, his face red with anger. He pointed his finger at the mother and son and gritted his teeth. Si Huang is a minor. Anything humiliating she does will affect her parents' upbringing methods and Prime Entertainment's reputation. It doesn't really matter what her upbringing looks like at home, but we cannot be turned into a laughingstock in public. And plastic surgery? How much can a surgically enhanced face be worth if this is real? Bai Qinglin. I can understand Si Hua's rashness and naivety. He's still young after all. But are you incapable of understanding something as simple as that? Si Hua looked resentful and aggrieved, unsure of what had happened. Bai Qinglin, however, suddenly came back to her senses and looked very upset. Si Jian stopped scolding them. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Hello, Secretary Wang? I believe there's some news on the internet about Si Huang's plastic surgery and a rift in our family. Deal with that immediately. I don't want any more negative reports on this subject. What about the rest? Leave it. No need to concern yourself with those things. Okay, I want results by tomorrow." After the call, Si Jian turned to Si Hua, who still looked a bit confused and resentful. "Use your brain next time. I'll have Si Huang concede and give you the role Director Liu gave her." However, Si Hua still wasn't happy when he heard that the role would return to him. The word "give" felt more humiliating to him. Si Jian waited for Si Huang's return the rest of the night. Unfortunately, there was still no sign of Si Huang even at nightfall. He called her phone a few times, but there was no answer. Enraged, Si Jian came to a realization. Si Huang meant what she'd said on the phone. The signboard, "Night," shone brightly in the dark night. Si Huang did not use the front door. She entered through the back door instead. There were quite a lot of people in the alley on this dusky night. Si Huang placed a mental filter over the slimy, horny voices around her. When she arrived at Knight's back door, she saw a man in a hip-hop outfit standing there. He lifted his head and frowned when he saw Si Huang. "What took you so long? Do you have any idea how much my time is worth?" he snapped impatiently. "Forget it, take this. It's almost time. I've explained to the manager. It's all on you now." The man tossed his guitar over to Si Huang, who caught it skillfully. "Come on, what are you standing around for?" Si Huang was speechless. She was beginning to understand the mix-up now. She pushed her cap down, making its brim hide a huge portion of her face. She curved the corners of her lips into a small smile as she followed the man. The man, Joe Lee, was stunned when he saw this. "This kid's pretty good looking. You can tell that he's a handsome dude just by looking at his chin and lips," he thought. Then, his gaze lingered on the shadow beneath the cap's brim and he thought, if his entire face looks as good as that, we can keep him as long as his voice isn't too bad. Night was an entirely different world on the inside. Although the world outside was silent, Night was alive with excitement. Saying that people were wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves while various rogues were running wild would be an appropriate way of describing it. The dynamic music came to an abrupt pause. The people around immediately howled. "What happened? Something wrong with the player? Ha ha ha. Is Ali coming on stage? Ali, Ali?" The sound of women screaming echoed from the back, overtaking the men's grumbling voices. The spotlight on the stage dimmed. In the darkness, Joe Lee pushed Si Huang onto the stage without an introduction. Most teenagers would be nervous about having a first experience under these circumstances. There was no one to warm up the crowd for him. Joe Lee was spitefully watching the scene as if he were enjoying a joke. However, when he saw Si Huang's tall, straight back as he walked on stage on his long, slender legs while exuding charisma, he didn't seem nervous at all. When Si Huang, who was wearing casual attire, stepped on stage and sat on the high stool, the screams chanting for Joe Lee stopped. All that was left were questions. "Is that a new guy? Doesn't look too bad. His legs are amazing." "Hey, singing guy, take off the cap." Si Huang lifted her chin and realized that this was the best spot for observation. She could see everyone very clearly, so it would be much easier for her to find the person she was looking for. "Are you going to have another faith windfall, Your Highness?" Wu Beo's gleeful voice echoed in her mind. Based on Wu Beo's observations, the last time they'd had a faith windfall was when she had performed in front of a large crowd. Si Huang chuckled. Killing two birds with one stone was a great idea too. Her voice moved through the room thanks to the microphone, sublime yet indolent, with an elegance tinted with carelessness. It should have sounded like a lofty yet elegant tune, but somehow, it came off as sexy. So sexy that it could render one completely numb. This was probably due to the exaggerated circumstances of her current situation. "FCK, my ears are going to get pregnant." A muscular, tomboyish woman's screams reverberated throughout the audience. Si Huang was stunned. Her slender finger plucked the guitar strings just before the audience descended into chaos. She had some experience with most modern instruments. She was most skilled in playing the piano, though she was only slightly better than an amateur when it came to other instruments. Gentle music began to play. It wasn't the kind of explosive tune that would fill the entire room. Instead, it was a soft, soothing, lovely melody with a hint of melancholy. Most people knew that a soothing tune could also be considered a melancholy melody. A sad song symbolized deep affection. Si Huang was singing an English song. Almost everyone looked shocked when he opened his lips. The pure melody was simply stunning when it was combined with her blessed voice. Many people understood the meaning behind this song. It was a song about a broken heart, or, to be more accurate, the artist who had originally sung this song had been conveying a message about letting go. The lyrics described a girl who had betrayed him and his decision to forget her. He was telling himself and everyone else that this girl wasn't worth his sorrow and that he would be happier without her. Ever since this song had been released, it had been used by countless broken-hearted people to talk about philanderers and express their scorn for their lovers and their betrayal. However, Si Huang's soft, husky voice had managed to bring out a sense of passionate love, grief, and envy for this non-existent girlfriend through this spiteful song. He must have truly loved that woman, even though he was singing the words, "Let everything end, let all this be torn apart like a violent storm." The audience felt his helpless agony. which was much stronger than his spite, as he tried to hold himself back through his hoarse voice, telling himself that he must not turn back. Even if he did, he would never get her back anyway. The audience was silent. Every ear was captivated by his voice. Every eye was bound to the soulful singer on stage. Due to the height and lighting, half of his face was covered by his cap. However, his slightly squinted eyes were shining so brightly in the dusky darkness that no one could ignore them. Despite the obscurity preventing them from seeing his entire face, he was 100% handsome and mysterious, especially his eyes. Everyone who looked at him would think that he was looking right back at them, pouring endless feelings into his song. If only he loved me, I'd never cheat on him. This sudden thought resonated in the deepest recesses of the minds of many people there. This wasn't limited to women. Even men felt the same way. Si Huang was oblivious to the inner thoughts of everyone around her and ignored Wu Beo's gleeful cheers, which were echoing in her mind. She kept her eyes open so that she could find the shadow she had been looking for, and she was very lucky. Thanks to her heightened senses after the power-up, she finally found her prey among the sea of people. The corners of her lips curled up. The spotlight burned bright as the sound of the guitar continued to soar and the chorus was reaching its climax again. That smile made the hearts of everyone who saw it skip a beat. They just couldn't describe this feeling, or rather, this feeling was so all-consuming that no one knew how to describe it. "Ah, I want to be your girlfriend." A random woman's crazed screams pierced the air as the song reached its climax. This outburst was followed by a stream of screams from both men and women. There were even faint sounds of choked sobs among the crowd, which was shouting, "Don't be sad, Prince Charming. Cheating on you will be the biggest regret of her life." Despite the crowd's frenzy beneath her, Si Huang was not affected. She sang the high notes of the chorus with ease, bringing every note higher and sending the crowd into an even greater frenzy. This was a stark contrast to the absolute silence in the beginning, surprising a small group of people in the dark. However, everyone present could feel Si Huang's live performance deep in their very bones. They also felt that this was all perfectly logical. This young man on the cusp of adulthood had been born with amazing charisma that was enough to drive people wild. Realizing that the song was about to end, Sha Kaitong, who was standing in the dark, pulled his intense gaze away and told the manager next to him, "Sign him on." Sha Kaitong's warm voice held his usual swift, decisive tone. It was clear that he was a superior who was used to ordering people around. The manager was about to agree when he spoke up again, "You may listen to his conditions." The manager's heart leapt. It would seem that his boss really liked this kid, and he probably wouldn't mind paying any price to get him. Sha Kaitong's tall, slender, celebrity-like figure disappeared around the corner before he knew it. The manager immediately turned to the still-dazed Zhou Li and said, "You brought this sapling here, didn't you? I'm sure you must be close. Make sure you are nice to him when he gets off the stage." Even though he knew that this kid was probably here because of his desire to join them, he wouldn't dare hinder his boss's orders. Zhou Li, who had just come back to his senses, mumbled as if he was in a trance, "Oh, all right." Suddenly, the phone in his pocket vibrated. He absent-mindedly took it out, saw a few messages, and tapped to read them. Li Zhou immediately widened his eyes when he saw this. His expression turned increasingly stranger. He immediately lifted his head and turned towards Si Huang on the stage. Just as he was about to speak up, Si Huang happened to finish his song. The spotlight over his head was turned off and everything went black. This was Night's usual process. They would turn off all the lights for a few seconds after every act to prepare for the next performance. If the next performance wasn't extravagant, 1 second of darkness would be enough. This time felt extremely short to the audience, but no one knew that the object of their desire would disappear when the lights came back on. "Where is he? Where is he? Come on, sing another song." Did he go off stage to prepare something? Where has he gone? The guitar is still here? Was I hallucinating? Prince Charming, where are you? I want to have your babies." The crowd was beginning to riot. The lonely guitar had been left on the stage. Si Huang had taken advantage of the momentary darkness to jump off the stage and then duck to find her prey. The spectators weren't the only ones getting anxious. The manager was panicking too. "Where is he? Call him right now," he screamed at Zhou Li. Zhou Li's expression looked twisted. Sir, there was a mistake. I don't have his number," he stammered. Then, there were the contents of the message on his phone screen too. Where are you, Brother Lee? Why aren't you at the meeting spot? I've called you many times, but you haven't answered. The security guard won't let me in if you don't meet me outside. The impatience of the person behind the message was clear, judging by the number of questions he had sent. He seemed to be restraining himself to avoid throwing a tantrum too. The sender was the person that Joe Lee had planned on introducing tonight. Si Huang's prey was a punk who was relatively well known on this street. His nickname was Poison Eyes. He was 30 years old and was a minor team leader of a subsidiary branch of the Sickle Gang. True gang members wouldn't pay someone like him any attention, but he was considered a big shot among most petty street thugs. Poison Eyes frequently loitered around this street all year round. Night was his favorite haunt. Si Huang wasn't surprised that she had managed to find him today. She had noticed Poison Eyes forcibly dragging a waitress out of the back door during the chaos while everyone in the crowd had been occupied, just as she had been about to finish her song. She may not have had time to catch up to Poison Eyes, but she managed to find Poison Eyes and his thugs by using her foggy memories and heightened hearing. She arrived at an abandoned warehouse with only a dim, flickering street lamp within a 100-meter radius. No one would be bothered to hang around this place except Poison Eyes, his thugs, and the waitress. There were 8 of them in total. Si Huang could see Poison Eyes' movements very clearly, even though she was around 100 meters away. She could even hear their conversation. She knew that this was the product of Wu Bao's power-up and rejoiced in it. You're lucky that you caught Brother Poison's eye, girl. Do you really think you'd be able to stay in night without Brother Poison's protection? One of Poison Eye's underlings sneered. Si Huang could even see the gloating glint in his eyes. To her surprise, the waitress didn't seem angry or desperate. Her voice even sounded calm. You're the only ones causing me trouble. You don't have to deliberately toy with me with words like that. After a pause, the girl's voice sounded very youthful. You're not gonna leave me alone today, are you, Brother Poison? Poison Eyes curled his lips and laughed. That's what I like about you, Ling Ling. You're not weak like other chicks. You're right, I'm not a patient man. I've been asking you to be my girl for a long time, and you still haven't agreed. I have no choice. He spoke as if it was the girl's fault for being unreasonable. Be a good girl today, Poison Eyes said with a smile. You'll be my girl from now on, and if you misbehave, well, let's just say, the more, the merrier, hey. The eyes of the underling who had previously spoken lit up. You're such a scholar, bro. The waitress fell momentarily silent, which Poison Eyes interpreted as consent. He gave them a meaningful look and his thugs regretfully stepped away. However, they did not go very far. It seemed like they wanted to enjoy the show. Then, Si Huang finally had a clear view of the face of the girl, who had drawn her interest. Her skin was fair with a slight tan. She had pretty, delicate eyebrows and lovely almond-shaped eyes that were perfectly placed on her heart-shaped face. She was a beauty in the bloom of her youth. The cold, resilient expression on her beautiful face added a certain flavor to her. It was no wonder Poison Eyes was attracted to her. However, this girl looked like she was under 20 years old. Who knew why she was working as a waitress at night and had run into this bad luck? She looks familiar, Si Huang mumbled to herself before she suddenly heard the girl mutter quietly, Poison Eyes, I will make you pay for what you're going to do to me today. Her words had no effect on Poison Eyes. They excited him even more instead. You will learn to love me, and this. His meaningful tone along with the bulge in his pants finally created a crack in the girl's calm exterior. Poison Eyes bent down, reached out with his hand, and pulled the girl's pants down straight away. 2 to 3 thugs jeered and laughed in the meantime. A figure sprinted toward them from 100 meters away. There was no time for any of the thugs to react. Then, a man's scream was heard before the world went silent. Si Huang tossed the rock in her hand away and kicked Poison Eyes in the stomach. Blood was foaming in Poison Eyes' mouth. Si Huang made sure that Poison Eyes would not be able to stand up again for a while. Then, she turned around and fought with the other thugs. She was too fast. The strength in her punches and kicks was a stark contrast to her slender figure. One punch was enough to knock someone unconscious, and one kick was enough to break a man's bones. As a result, none of the 6 thugs managed to escape. Si Huang had never imagined that she would receive such a huge skill upgrade. She almost lost control and nearly kicked them to death. However, even if she did beat them to death, the police wouldn't bother to launch an investigation. After all, people like them, who walked on the dark side of society, ran into all sorts of accidents every day. Poison Eyes. Si Huang walked toward Poison Eyes, bent down, and stared down at his twisted, agonized face. Why you? Poison Eyes recognized her as the soulful singer on the stage. Even he had been enthralled at the time and had only remembered to drag the girl away at the very end. Not everyone can play the hero and save the damsel in distress, kid. Don't you know? His threat came to an end when Si Huang took off her cap and revealed his beautiful face. His pupils dilated. Looks like you still remember me. Si Huang chuckled. Good, I'm here because I want something from you. Si Huang's charisma exceeded the limitations of gender norms. His smile, which was indescribably beautiful, completely dazzled Poison Eyes. However, he was unmoved in the face of such unparalleled beauty. He felt strangely terrified instead. This was a completely different feeling from when he had first met Si Huang, so it frightened him. What is it? The recording of that conversation you had with Si Hua. I want the part when he tells you to frame me, Si Huang said. Is this a joke? Poison Eyes let out a dry laugh. His pupils trembled violently. Si Huang fell momentarily silent. His eyes then lit up with a smile. He stood up elegantly and placed one foot on Poison Eye's hand. Then, he slowly ground his foot. Arg! Poison Eye's face was suddenly drained of color. He dearly wished to pull his hand away. Unfortunately, he couldn't move it at all. Crack, crossing AACK, the sound of cracking bones contrasted against Si Huang's gentle movements. Consider it a joke then. She smiled. She then gently removed her foot from Poison Eye's now crippled hand. Before Poison Eyes could manage to sigh in relief, he felt pressure on his crotch and his entire body broke into a cold sweat. Then, he convulsed violently. I'll tell you, it's on my phone, but I don't have my phone on me. I'll give it to you later. Si Huang nodded, feeling satisfied, and promptly stepped on his crotch all the way through. The extreme pain nearly made Poison Eye's eyes pop out of their sockets. He died before he could even scream. Si Huang swiftly removed her foot, turned around, and faced one of the 6 thugs. You, search him, she ordered. The thug forced himself to his feet, reached into the dead Poison Eye's pocket, and took out the phone without a word. He even made the effort to take a packet of tissues out of his own pocket and carefully wipe the phone before giving it to Si Huang. He didn't do this because the phone was poisoned, he just had a hunch that Si Huang was a clean freak. His movements were natural, and Si Huang accepted the phone naturally as well. In reality, she was too disgusted to touch Poison Eye's body. She looked through the phone and soon found what she needed. Despite Poison Eye's degenerate ways, he was crafty. However, that alone was not enough. He was no visionary. She remembered that Si Hua had framed her in her past life and she had been forced to swallow drugs by Poison Eyes. A series of unfortunate events had soon followed, preventing her from getting revenge. By the time she'd had the opportunity and the ability, Poison Eyes had been dead. He had died because he'd kept using the recording to blackmail Si Hua. His greed had driven Si Hua to end his life. As for the recording, Si Hua had obviously deleted it. She had found out because Si Hua had mentioned it to her in passing when he had been in the middle of taunting her. Furthermore, the thug in front of her had mentioned it too. After sending the recording to her phone, Si Huang handed Poison Eye's remains to the young thug. He was a teenager younger than Si Huang with average, delicate features. His complexion was dark yellow in color due to malnutrition and frequent exposure to the elements. He had spiky hair and small bumps all over, so someone had probably pulled his hair during a fight. No one would have thought that this ugly-looking young man would slowly rise up the ranks with his ferocity and cunning, achieving fame in the underworld and single-handedly building a glorious career. Rumor had it that no one knew if he was crippled or dead, despite his failure in the end. Spiky Head, or rather Zhou Jun, felt a little anxious at the sight of the seemingly elegant wealthy man's son, who was a terrifying demon in reality. He was calmer and more calculating than teenagers his age. He had handled Poison Eyes with ease but simply couldn't remain calm in the face of this young man, who was not very much older than him. Si Huang watched as Zhou Jun, who had been King Zhou in her past life, lowered his head. She could even see the cold sweat on his forehead, which took her by surprise. Everything was different now. From the moment she had been given a second chance at life, everything had changed. In her past life, at the age of 16, Poison Eyes had seemed like a mighty, unmovable mountain. She had dearly wished she could grind him to dust but had been powerless to do so. Now, moments ago, when she'd laid eyes on Poison Eyes again, she had realized that she didn't hate him at all. Looking at him was more like looking at a big, smelly bug that she could easily crush. She wasn't even interested in torturing him. It was true, she had experienced much more and learned a lot in her past life, so it made sense for her to feel this way for Poison Eyes and his men when they first met. No matter how tragic her circumstances were, after working hard to learn skills and gather knowledge to protect herself and meeting more powerful and terrifying people, she'd realized that the mountains of her teen years seemed more like rats in the gutter to her. They were not even worth looking at. This was human nature. The view looked different every time one stood from a different angle. Then, one would realize how insignificant the pain one had experienced and held onto truly was. Unfortunately, she was incapable of protecting herself and adapting to the circumstances. Thus, when she finally had power and real tragedy struck, these insignificant grudges seemed stale and much smaller. "You owe me one," Si Huang told Zhou Jun as she organized her thoughts. "What?" Zhou Jun asked, looking stunned. He lifted his head and came face to face with those clear, limpid eyes in the dim light. He never would have thought that this pure-looking young man with the most beautiful eyes ever would have been capable of killing Poison Eyes so easily if he hadn't witnessed it with his own eyes. "I've decided to spare you. As payment, I'll leave you to clean all this up. Remember that you owe me your life and this chance," Si Huang explained with a smile. Zhou Jun's pupils dilated when he heard the word, chance. After a moment of silence, he said, "I will remember my debt to you, His smooth, beautiful fingers glowed in the darkness like white jade, creating a stark contrast against Zhou Jun's sallow skin. Zhou Jun's face turned green as his fingers tightened their grip around his neck. His eyes were filled with fear. "You owe me your life," Si Huang slowly corrected him. The small glimmer of victory in Zhou Jun's heart finally disappeared. He nodded with great difficulty. Si Huang released his grip. He turned around and saw the young girl still kneeling on the ground. She happened to be looking over at them and noticed Si Huang's eyes on her thighs. Then, she remembered that Poison Eyes had pulled down her pants, which were still hanging off her legs. She blushed and quickly put her pants back on. Unfortunately, the zipper on her trousers had been broken thanks to Poison Eyes. The girl was frustrated from embarrassment and unsure what to do. Then, she noticed a black sweater through her lowered eyes. She looked up and saw that aesthetically pleasing face again. "Tie it to your waist and no one will see," Si Huang said. Thank you." After the girl tied her trousers, she looked up and saw Si Huang still standing in front of her. Her lips twitched, but she didn't know what to say. Thank you." She felt really ineloquent after blurting those words and blushed furiously. Si Huang chuckled. "I'll take you home." Zhou Jun silently watched them leave. Si Huang and the girl kept nearly half a meter's distance between them as they walked in an alleyway. After 2 to 3 minutes, Zhou Jun and his gang were too far away to be seen. Suddenly, a soft voice called out behind Si Huang. "I know you. You're Si Huang. My name is Yu Ling, and I've seen your video before. You're amazing. You're even more handsome in real life. I wanted to say, thank you very much." This nervous side to her made her look more like a 16 to 17-year-old girl, which was completely different from her calm exterior when she'd faced Poison Eyes. Si Huang paused thoughtfully, then curled her lips into a smile. Yu Ling. So this was Yu Ling. It was no wonder she looked so familiar. "I never thought that I'd run into this legendary makeup artist known for her magic hands." Si Huang paused in her tracks, turned around, and looked at the embarrassed-looking Yu Ling. "I didn't recognize her because she looks very different. Yu Ling was already famous when I met her in my past life. She was cold, arrogant, and strong. She was cold to people too. She was completely different from this delicate little flower." Yu Ling had initially managed to look her in the eye but lost her nerve 5 seconds later. She turned her gaze away. Were you really going to kill that guy?" She panicked as soon as she said it. This was a question that had been lingering in her head, but she had not planned on actually saying it out loud. Unfortunately, as soon as she stared into Si Huang's eyes, she couldn't help blurting it out. She was both afraid of Si Huang's wrath and curious to know the answer. Suddenly, she heard a small chuckle. The chuckle sounded a little nasal, and Si Huang's special voice added a seductive feel to it. Yu Ling carefully raised her head. Si Huang bent down, bringing their faces very close. If such a magnificent, beautiful face suddenly smiled at them, anyone's heart would pound against their chests. Of course not. Si Huang smiled. Yu Ling's face was filled with doubt. Si Huang smirked mischievously as she placed her finger on her red lips and blinked at her. It was just an act. I was actually pretty nervous. Don't tell anyone, Kay? Yu Ling widened her eyes and snorted, unconsciously influenced by the atmosphere that Si Huang had created. She then relaxed. You were amazing. By the way, I saw the video of your audition. You were awesome. Si Huang laughed. His smile seemed angelic in Yu Ling's eyes. It was pure, bright, and enough to lift one's spirits. However, she had completely forgotten that this angelic young boy had just killed Poison Eyes. He had been smiling then too. Si Huang hadn't been known as the movie king for nothing in her past life. She'd earned it through hard work. As a top actor, she needed to know how to control her charisma, and when she did, her magnetism was more than capable of influencing the people around her. After putting Yu Ling in a car, Si Huang took a cab back to Fragrant View Societal Homes. You're so amazing, Your Highness. Wu Bei's voice echoed in her head, imitating Yu Ling's flattery. Si Huang smiled. What is it? Ding, ding, ding. Congratulations, Your Highness. You've won a gold sparkle. Wu Bao exclaimed, its tail wagging. Si Huang raised her brow. We need 3 more. Aren't you afraid of dying with me? 3 sparkles shouldn't be a problem for you, Your Highness, Wu Bao replied carelessly. Si Huang was speechless. Who was it that kept urging me like a workaholic from the very beginning? Who didn't believe in me? What a capricious, silly little thing. Yu Ling got out of the car when she was near her house. She noticed a figure underneath a street lamp immediately. Big brother, Yu Ling called out to him as usual, clutching the sweater around her waist nervously. The man strode toward Yu Ling and grabbed her wrist. Something's happened, he said in a low, grim voice. Yu Ling gritted her teeth silently. He had made a statement. He wasn't going to believe her lies. Silence began to permeate the air between the pair. Suddenly, Yu Shi wrapped his arms around her and stroked her head. Let's go home. Mom is worried. Yu Ling grabbed his sleeve. Mom doesn't know anything, does she? I told her that you were celebrating a friend's birthday, Yu Shi replied as he released her and walked straight ahead. You're not allowed to go there anymore. You've promised. This time, I won't let you have your way. Yu Ling bit her lips. Si Huang's image appeared in her mind, and her heart raced furiously. She lifted and lowered her head but was unable to provide Yu Shi with a rebuttal. Her brother was just as stubborn as she was. Once he made a decision, no one could change his mind. He had previously agreed to help cover for her in front of their mother. However, if anything happened, she'd have to quit. Yu Ling had been supposed to stop anyway after Poison Eye's involvement. She suddenly remembered Si Huang. Could he have misunderstood in some way? Does my job make me look like a rebellious delinquent to him? But why should it matter? Why'd I have to explain myself to him? Yu Shi noticed that something was on his sister's mind. However, there was no point in asking her. If there was something on her mind and she didn't want to talk about it, no one would be able to get it out of her. The 2 siblings walked along the dirty, dilapidated streets. Soon, they arrived at an old single-story house. They set aside their respective emotions and shared a look. Then, Yu Ling called out in a clear, bright voice, Mom, I'm home. She pushed the door open and walked into the house. You're home, Ling Ling. I've warmed up your food for you. Come and eat. If Si Huang were there, she would have realized that the middle-aged woman who had stepped out to greet them was her hired housekeeper, Zhao Laimei. Si Huang received another call from Si Jian after her morning jog. The phone rang while she was in the shower. To her surprise, she wasn't greeted by Si Jian's angry screams when she stepped out of the shower to answer the phone. However, she could tell that he was in a bad mood. This can't be done over the phone. You're coming home today, or I will send someone to get you. This was clearly a thinly veiled threat. Si Huang was very calm in the face of this threat. I'm going to school. The conversation between the pair ended on bad terms once again. To be exact, Si Jian was the unhappy party. Si Huang, on the other hand, didn't care. In fact, she was in a pretty good mood because everything was going her way. That phone conversation with Si Jian was a sign that all negative news about her on the internet had been wiped clean. Si Huang returned to Star Youth Academy of Arts once again and unsurprisingly became the center of attention. After all, she was the hottest topic in the Star Youth Academy of Arts forum. She had put on a clean white shirt today with a dark green suit jacket and a pair of pants in the same style that complemented her long legs perfectly. She'd slipped on a pair of leather boots, not bothering to tie up her shoelaces neatly. The loosened style gave her a casual and indolent air. The 16-year-old was completely unfazed by the stares she was getting from everyone around her. She kept her gaze steadily forward and smiled as she walked along the pavement in the schoolyard. She seemed to be bursting with youthful vigor, yet she had such a calm and steady air about her that she didn't seem like an impulsive teenager at all. Her aura was so overpowering that no one dared to approach her. They could only watch as she walked past them. Si Huang did not go to her classroom. Instead, she went to the art department. "Ah, Your Highness." Class had just ended for Class B of the art department. Yu Ling, who was sitting in the last row next to the window, turned her head to look outside. She was absent-mindedly thinking about last night's incident when she heard the noise outside. Her heart started racing so fast that it skipped a beat. She had seen the term, Your Highness, plenty of times in forums. Upon hearing the deafening screams of the girls outside, she rose to her feet and walked out of the classroom before she could arrange her own thoughts, as if she were in a trance. Meanwhile, Si Huang was extending her hand to catch a female student who had nearly tripped. "Are you all right?" Then, she lifted her head and looked around. Her gaze was pure and gentle, as though moonlit pools were flowing deep within her eyes. "I'm glad that you're all so friendly, but I'd feel very guilty if someone ended up getting hurt because of all this." His magnetic, sublime voice was tinged with a hint of distress, but it didn't sound like he was scolding anyone. In fact, it made them feel as if he were coddling them instead. The girls slowly turned from savage wolves into shy little sheep. However, their eyes burned with more fiery passion than ever before. Some even covered their lips with their hands, batting their eyes furiously at Si Huang as if they were trying to send him a telepathic message that said, "Prince Charming, I'll be good. See, I'm a good girl, don't I deserve a reward?" Si Huang laughed. This was probably the most accurate portrayal of everything that was going on in the girls' minds. "Your Highness, how could you look at me with such helpless, indulgent eyes? Why is your smile so seductive? I'm going to faint. I'll faint if I fall. Would you catch me, Your Highness?" Yu Ling. After dealing with the girls, Si Huang turned to the side and noticed the young girl by the classroom door. She smiled. "I need to talk to you. Do you have some time? Can we talk somewhere alone?" The words, "you, alone," and "talk," drummed heavily into every girl's mind. Yu Ling could sense the animosity around her from the moment Si Huang said those words. However, she couldn't help feeling as if her heart had skipped a beat. She nodded at Si Huang despite the intense glares of the crowd. Sure." The pair walked out of Star Youth Academy of Arts. Si Huang looked at the girl, who was hanging her head, and initiated the conversation. "You have a brother named Yu Shi, am I right?" Yu Ling lifted her head hesitantly. "Yes." She quickly regained her senses. "Your Highness, no, sorry. Si Huang, are you looking for my brother? Do you know him?" Si Huang smiled. "I know him, but he might not know me." Yu Ling stared at his dazzling smile. It should be the other way around, she thought. Then, she heard Si Huang's brisk voice say, "I'd like to ask Yu Shi for help. I might need you to back me up." Yu Ling was overcome by his influence once again. "I'll definitely help you as long as it's nothing bad," she replied casually, feeling slightly disappointed at the same time. Yu Shi was not studying at Star Youth Academy of Arts. He went to another famous educational institute in H City, Kingford University. The trio met up in the library of Kingford University with Yu Ling's help. They chose a lonely, obscure corner, where no one else was around. Si Huang and Yu Shi sat facing one another, both clearly evaluating each other. Based on Si Huang's observation, Yu Shi had been pretty much the same in her past life. He had a kind of salt of the earth look to him, a slightly skinny figure, and a cool, keen gaze. These were clear manifestations of his old-fashioned personality. "Why have you manipulated my sister into setting up a meeting with me?" Yu Shi asked in a swift tone as sharp as a knife. "Big brother." Yu Ling's expression faltered. Now, she remembered that she hadn't told Yu Shi about the incident last night. Otherwise, her brother would not have been so hostile. She was about to explain when Si Huang stopped her. Actually, Si Huang wasn't angered by Yu Zai's lack of manners. Instead, she admired him for it. Si Huang and Yu Shi had not been close in her past life, but she was aware of his character and experiences. He was ruthless and he had a sharp tongue, but he valued kinship, especially when it came to his one and only sister. His prickly attitude was a product of his love and protectiveness for his sister. "I'd like to hire you as my manager." Si Huang's smile and tone were brimming with earnestness and sincerity. Yu Shi couldn't find any trace of jest on her face, so he swallowed the "are you kidding?" on the tip of his tongue. After a moment of silence, he covertly rejected the offer. "I'm only a third-year university student. I have no managing license or any experience. You're an adult. With your talents, passing the test to get your license will only be a matter of time." A hint of alarm and uncertainty flashed in Yu Zai's eyes. "You seem to know me very well. You sound like you have more confidence in me than I do." Even Yu Ling could hear the mockery in his tone, let alone Si Huang. Si Huang had always respected talented, capable individuals with good moral principles. Instead of arguing with him, she completed his statement by saying, "That's right, I have a lot of confidence in you. Furthermore, I sincerely hope that you'll help me. Relatively speaking, I have a lot of confidence in myself, so I believe that I will bring you a lot of profit too." Yu Shi was stunned by the serious look on his face. Si Huang then spoke up again. "If you agree, I can get you a managing license in advance. We can then discuss your commission. By the way, Director Liu has already given me a role in his new television series, The Sovereign Journey. That means that if you agree to this now, you'll soon receive a pretty good reward." Yu Shi was speechless. "You can tag along with me to the theater and see my worth with your own eyes," Si Huang suggested. "If you're not impressed, you can terminate the contract immediately. However, if you choose to move forward with it after your observation, you won't have the chance to leave whenever you want." Yu Shi remained silent. Si Huang smiled. "You don't have anything to lose here, why won't you agree?" Yu Shi took a deep breath and then stared at Si Huang seriously. "You're right, I'll do it. But I need you to clarify something for me." "Why me? What do I have to offer?" Why would he choose a law student like me instead of the amazing resources of Prime Entertainment or propose such unreasonably superior conditions? Si Huang extended her hand. "Your unique talent, of course." Yu Shi really didn't want to believe these words, however, he simply couldn't think of anything else about him that would draw Si Huang's attention. The look in Si Huang's eyes lit a spark in his heart, sending a warm current throughout his entire body. He rose to his feet and took Si Huang's hand. "Thank you for the compliment." This was his first time receiving such recognition. The young Yu Shi simply couldn't suppress his rising emotions. Si Huang and Yu Ling left after confirming their next meeting. Then, Yu Shi lowered his head and stared at his hand apprehensively. "He's already so good-looking. Did he have to have such soft skin too?" he wondered absent-mindedly. Si Huang took Yu Ling back to school. Just as they were about to arrive, Yu Ling couldn't hold back anymore. "Si Huang, why do you ask my brother to be your manager?" she asked. "He may be in law school, but he's never really concerned himself with the entertainment circle." Si Huang looked at her for 2 seconds and then smiled. "Just because someone is studying a subject, it doesn't mean that it suits them. Who knows, maybe a change can bring an unexpected surprise." His words seemed profound to Yu Ling. Before she could ask anything else, Si Huang suddenly said, "Sir, please stop the car at the side of the road. If anyone at school asks you about me, just come up with a random excuse to cover for me," Si Huang urged Yu Ling. Yu Ling nodded in understanding. Si Huang was 100 meters away from Star Youth Academy of Arts and could already see a few people hanging around the school gates. If she remembered correctly, those people were the Si family's bodyguards. It would seem that Si Jian really had sent someone to collect her. However, she didn't want to go home just yet. This wasn't because she was scared. She was simply reluctant to deal with this trouble, and she really didn't want to see Si Jian and the rest of the family, just in case she lost her temper and tore them all to pieces. Si Huang wondered if it was time to get a car as she walked along the street. Otherwise, transportation would be troublesome. "What are you going to do now, Your Highness?" Wu Bao asked. Si Huang shook her head and answered in her mind, "I just have to draw up the agreement with Yu Shi, that's all." What do you mean, that's all? You need gold sparkles? Wu Bao nagged her resentfully. It's such a nice day. Of course you'll have to go out and earn some gold sparkles. Si Huang imagined that Wu Bao was a little hamster rolling around and acting cute. She curved her lips into a smile and didn't answer. She began to write up the agreement when she got home. She even found a secret channel to get Yu Zai's managerial license. Although she had been controlled by Prime Entertainment for a very long time in her past life, her time with them had granted her access to a lot of connections. It wasn't difficult for her to obtain a mere managerial license after using her status as the eldest son of Prime Entertainment. By the time she was done, Zhao Liimei had finished cooking lunch. Unfortunately, an uninvited guest arrived and disrupted lunchtime. This was the first time Zhao Liimei was meeting the gloomy-faced Si Jian. She was just about to make tea when Si Huang stopped her. You can go home now, Auntie Zhao. You don't have to come over in the afternoon either. Okay. Zhao Liimei packed up and quietly left. Si Huang and Si Jian were the only ones left in the living room. This was the first time Si Huang was meeting Si Jian in person since her return. Si Jian was turning 40 years old this year, but he looked more like a man in his 30s. He had the face of a handsome, cultured man. Time had no effect on his charm. Si Jian, who had been sitting in a high position for many years, carried himself with a kind of maturity that no young man could ever have. The charm of a successful man. Si Huang had to admit that even though she had inherited most of her blessed good looks from Li Lisi, she carried a hint of Si Jian's shadow too. While Si Huang was lost in contemplation, Si Jian stared at his son, whom he hadn't seen for a few days. His last memory of Si Huang was the aftermath of beating him, until he had collapsed and started twitching in agony. He felt momentarily distracted by this. Was this elegant youth sitting gracefully in front of him really his son? Of course, this bout of absent-mindedness was gone in a flash. Si Huang's eyes, which looked so much like Li Lisi's, served as a reminder for Si Jian. This was his biological son? Oh, that was not right. This was his daughter. Si Jian frowned. He couldn't believe that he had actually been mystified by Si Huang's looks. Why won't you come home? He was in a bad mood, so his tone naturally didn't come off any better. Si Huang took note of his demeanor. She had especially noticed him scrutinizing his surroundings with disgust from time to time as if he had noticed some particularly repulsive object. She smiled. Of course Si Jian would be repulsed by this place. After all, it had belonged to Li Lisi. Coming here would remind him of his disgusting hypocrisy and the fact that he had once used a woman's feelings and manipulated her into gaining everything that he now owned. I don't feel like going home, Si Huang answered as she leisurely poured herself a glass of water. This careless attitude angered Si Jian. However, he felt strangely compelled to control his temper when he saw how dazzling Si Huang was. His eyes glimmered calculatingly. It would seem that he had underestimated his child's value. The possibility of making profit from this face and body made Si Jian regret beating Si Huang up that day. Is your back feeling better? He paused. Then, realizing the havoc wreaked by his powerful beating, he spoke again. I'll have my secretary get the best scabbing medicine. Hopefully, you won't end up with a scar. Long ago, I would have thought that Si Jian was worried about me, but now? Si Huang thought. A cold light flashed across her eyes. Her gaze quickly went back to normal when she looked up. Okay, she nodded at Si Jian. The pair fell silent again. Si Huang might have been able to stay calm, but Si Jian could not. He wasn't interested in beating around the bush anymore. I know that you've been cast in Director Liu's television series. Give the role to Si Hua. You've never dabbled in professional acting anyway, yet you've somehow managed to get the part by some random fluke. If you fail, you won't be the only one implicated. Si Jian rarely ever bothered providing such a long explanation, but Si Huang cut him off anyway. No. What? Even if I did give this role away, I'd never give it to Si Hua. What the hell are you saying? Si Jian slammed his hand on the desk and rose to his feet. I'm speaking English, Si Huang slowly replied. Si Jian lifted his hand, then stopped halfway. He glared icily at Si Huang's fearless, indifferent face. Fine, if you want the role, all legal documents will be handled by Prime Entertainment. Si Huang shook her head. I have no intention of signing a contract with Prime Entertainment, this is my career. Do you have any idea what you're saying? Si Jian was deadly calm despite feeling flustered. You'll never be able to break away from the C family or Prime Entertainment with your status. You can do whatever you want, Si Huang replied as if she had not noticed his threatening tone. I'll do what I want too. Si Jian was beginning to wonder if the person in front of him was a changeling. After some thought, he turned around. I am your legal guardian. You can't do anything unless I say so. This underage kid could pull all the tricks she wanted, but she could forget about kicking up a storm as long as he was around. Si Huang showed no signs of fear even when Si Jian angrily slammed the door shut. A profound light flickered in her eyes. Suddenly, she downed the glass of water and sprinted to the door. Si Huang's lonely little villa was situated in a more secluded part of Fragrant View societal homes. One rarely saw anyone else around, and Si Jian had parked his car in a temporary garage quite some distance away from the villa. He walked slowly and certainly didn't notice Si Huang's shadow slowly creeping up on him from behind. Si Huang silently quickened her pace when she turned a corner, swiftly leaping behind Si Jian like a bolt of lightning. Then, she put the paper bag that she had brought with her from home over Si Jian's head. Who are you? Si Huang quickly tied the bag around his neck, pulled him by the collar of his suit, and dragged him to a nearby forest. As his vision was shrouded in darkness, Si Jian was filled with a mixture of shock and anger. He realized that the person who had kidnapped him was terrifyingly strong. He couldn't even struggle. As for Si Huang, she began beating him to a pulp after throwing him to the ground. Her face was devoid of any emotion. Only her eyes shone darkly in the most threatening manner. Cough. Who the hell are you? What do you want? Who are you working for? How much are they paying you? How did you know that I'd be here? Have you been planning to attack me? Erg. Si Huang remained completely silent no matter what Si Jian said. She made sure that every blow would cause him agony but would not be enough to kill him. Finally, when Si Jian lost the strength to speak and was left groaning through gritted teeth, Si Huang pushed the hair on her forehead away, turned around, and left gleefully. Your Highness? Wu Bao's voice carefully echoed in her mind. She answered with a high-pitched tone. Wu Bao relaxed. Why didn't you just kill him? It asked. Why should I kill him? Si Huang asked with a smile. It'd be pretty troublesome if he died now, and it would be too easy on Siwa. Besides, a death like that would be too good for him. I thought. Wu Bao trailed off. It was frightening whenever Si Huang had that expressionless face and that look in her eyes. You thought what? Si Huang's smile was now reminiscent of an innocent young man's. I just wanted to let off some steam. Dealing with him was a little suffocating. Wu Bao was left speechless. You've become willful, Your Highness. Si Jian would never suspect Si Huang, no matter how much he investigated the matter. Besides, the Si Huang he knew would never have the balls and certainly wouldn't have the strength to do that. Hence, he'd never find the real culprit. Life was rather unsmooth for Si Jian over the next few days, which was a stark contrast to Si Huang's life. She handed the managerial license and agreement to Yu Shi. Once the pair had signed the contract and reached a consensus, Director Liu called. Damn you, you brat. I just got a call from the director of Prime Entertainment, who told me that you're sick and won't be able to shoot the TV series. What the hell is that supposed to mean? They're telling me some crap about offering to fund us as compensation and recommending a more suitable actor. Director Liu's tone was extremely unpleasant and filled with wrath. Si Huang shot the Yu siblings a look, then slowly explained, I seem to remember signing an individual contract. Prime Entertainment does not have the right to represent me. Director Liu immediately understood. Most of his anger dissipated when he found out that Si Huang had no intention of giving up on the role. I don't give a DMN about your familial issues, but I'm warning you, Old Tai is personally overseeing this film, and if anyone tries to sabotage it, well, let's just say they won't be able to handle the consequences. These words might sound like a threat to Si Huang, but she managed to detect their subtle implication. Director Liu was actually providing her with assurance. She did not need to worry about any pressure from Prime Entertainment. No one could make her relinquish her role as long as she remained determined to hold on to it. Furthermore, until filming for The Sovereign Journey was complete, no one would have the guts to do anything to her. Si Huang was well aware of that. That was why Si Jian's threats had no effect on her at all. However, she was grateful for Director Liu's subtle concern for her. I understand. Thank you, Director, she smiled. I'm glad that you understand. One more thing. What about your classes? I've just been notified that the filming schedule for The Sovereign Journey has been pushed to an earlier date. Forget it. It's difficult to talk about this on the phone. What are you doing the day after tomorrow? Do you have some free time? Come over to Golden Delight Tower at 9 a.m. and we'll talk face to face. Okay. Si Huang ended the call and turned to the Yu siblings. Are you free 2 days from now? Sure, Yu Shi answered. I can tag along, Yu Ling said. However, Yu Shi shot her a look before she could complete her sentence. She pursed her lips and said, Fine, I'll take care of Mom. Si Huang raised her brow quizzically. She seemed to recall that the siblings' parents had already passed away in her past life, so why was the mother still around at this time? She didn't think too much of it. She treated the pair to lunch and then left. Si Huang drove a car over to pick Yu Shi up from Kingford University at 8 a.m. the day after tomorrow. Yu Shi was surprised when the low-key, silver-gray car stopped in front of him, but the windows were then winded down to reveal Si Huang's handsome face. Get in, he said. In the car, Yu Shi tried his best to conceal his excitement, but a young man's enthusiasm was almost too difficult to hide when it came to cars. Si Huang noticed his roaming eyes and smiled. You like it? Yu Shi did not reply. This car isn't expensive. It costs about 100,000 yuan. It's just something I use to get around, Si Huang explained. The mildly higher pitch of her voice was enticing. Stick with me and I guarantee that you'll be able to get a much better car someday. Think of me as a golden goose. You're the heir to Prime Entertainment and you're driving a car that only costs 100,000 yuan? Yu Shi asked. Si Huang shot him a sidelong glance and carelessly replied, Who said that it belongs to Prime Entertainment? I bought this with money I made from stocks. By the way, just a small reminder. If you join me, Prime Entertainment will be your enemy. The amount of information contained in her response was overwhelming, rendering Yu Shi temporarily unable to fully grasp the situation. Then, he began to regret his venomous remark and feel a little inferior. He was already earning enough money to buy a car, yet he was not even an adult yet. What about me? All I can do is work hard enough to cover my own tuition fees and avoid giving my mom an extra burden. It's not like I can help much. But why would the heir to Prime Entertainment make an enemy out of Prime Entertainment? They soon arrived at Golden Delight Tower. Si Huang pulled a bag from the back seat and gave it to Yu Shi. There are clothes for you inside. I bought them based on your measurements. Change in the bathroom. Then, she stopped Yu Shi from saying whatever he had been about to say. Don't refuse. A manager's role isn't as simple as acting as the middleman. I'll deduct the money for clothes and everything else from your pay once you've officially signed on. Actually, Yu Shi had cleaned up specifically for this appointment. He'd even put on a suit. However, the suit was ill-fitting, the quality was shabby, and the style was outdated. It made his old-fashioned face seem even more dated. Si Huang leaned against the washroom doorway. Around 4 to 5 minutes later, she heard movement and turned around. A young 21-year-old man in a fitted gray-blue suit came into view. He looked trim and energetic, with a clean and neat haircut and a fair, clear complexion. His keen eyes were accentuated by a pair of silver-rimmed glasses. He seemed really overpowering as he walked toward her. Si Huang nodded in satisfaction. Very good, she smiled. Her compliment made Yu Shi feel a little embarrassed. He had also taken a good look at Si Huang and realized that, despite his effortless style, he had managed to highlight his best features. He didn't look sloppy at all. His noble air came naturally from within. Furthermore, the smile on his naturally flawless face was enough to make anyone's heart race. Yu Shi immediately acknowledged Si Huang's previous statement by default. He really was a golden goose, a naturally born megastar destined to be pursued by a legion of mad fans. Let's go, Si Huang said. Yu Shi replied. Si Huang paid attention to the way he walked too. As expected of an elite manager known for his stony face and poisonous tongue in my past life, she silently thought. Just like Yu Ling, Yu Shi was destined to carve a well-known name for himself in the entertainment circle. He would become well-known for his tactics and clever tongue. He would be like an impassable barrier for any talented person under his care. People like the paparazzi, who would weasel their way through any means possible, could forget about getting anywhere near his artists, let alone bombarding them with questions or discrediting them. This was what Si Huang wanted from Yu Shi. Although he had yet to grow into the person he would be in 10 years, he was definitely going to grow within a short period and become her right-hand man, allowing her the freedom to take care of other affairs. The pair walked into the elevator together. Just as the doors were about to close, someone yelled, "Wait, please hold the elevator, wait." Si Huang raised her brow as she saw a group of people running toward them in an imposing manner. One of them was at the very front of the group. Finally, he reached out and stopped the elevator doors from closing. "Oh my God, didn't I tell you to hold the elevator? Didn't you understand me at all?" He shot Si Huang a glare but was stunned when he had a good look at his face. This face, he's not an A-list celebrity, is he? Guan Li, who was supported by an entourage, soon approached him from behind. She paused for a second when she saw Si Huang, then planted herself in the center of the elevator as if there was no one else around. Everyone else looked at each other, then surrounded Guan Li like stars circling the moon, forcing Si Huang and Yu Shi into the corner of the elevator.